Chapter 713. The bungalow in the village was called a house, but in fact there was almost nothing inside. Apart from a pile of sundries in the corner, there was no window, no light source, no table, no bed. Guzi, Yitzi, and Ding Ming directly sat on the ground. Isendale did not sit down. The reason was simple. She disliked the dirt on the floor, and the room was filled with all kinds of unpleasant smells like the stench of dead animals. Guzi and Yitzi were obviously very happy. Yitzi even dug around in the pile of junk for a while and dug out a string of black things. "Brother Ding Ming, are you hungry? Eat something first." Yitzi happily handed over the string of black things. This time, Isendale saw it clearly. It was a string of dried meat, but the dried meat was black and yellow. It was impossible to tell that it was dried meat. It also emitted a rotten smell. Just smelling it made her want to vomit, let alone eat it. As an origin ability user, she was immune to rotten food. Isendale's nausea was completely out of her womanly instinct. After all, she had enjoyed all kinds of fine wine and delicacies in the Federation City. How could she eat this? However, Ding Ming didn't mind. After receiving it, she took a big bite and chewed with relish. "Sister, you should eat some too," Yitzi said timidly. She was a little scared of this beautiful and eye-catching big sister. Isendale really wanted to say, "Is this thing edible?" But when she met Yitzi's eyes, her heart softened. "No, I'm not hungry." After chatting for a while, Ding Ming asked, "Guzi, where are the people in the village? Do they all go hunting?" Guzi's smile immediately disappeared. "Brother Ding Ming, only Yitzi and I are left in the village now." Ding Ming frowned. "What happened? Where are the village chief and the others?" Guzi sighed. "They're all dead." Ding Ming was stunned. "How did they die?" Guzi's gaze fell to the ground. "He died 8 years ago. Uncle Jixiang went to the polluted area to hunt, but was dragged away by the octopus monster. The village elder brought people to search for him, but they failed to return." Ding Ming also fell into silence. "Where are your grandparents?" Guzi said sadly, 6 years ago, during the Great Cataclysm, it snowed here for 5 months. We couldn't find anything to eat, and we didn't have enough food. They all starved to death." Ding Ming stopped talking. He knew that death was a common occurrence in this place. The reason was simple. There was nothing here. "Where are your parents?" Ding Ming asked again. Guzi revealed a sad expression. "Mother also went to the polluted area that year, but she couldn't find anything to eat. She could only go to the depths of the devouring realm to pick fruits. She found a few that weren't poisonous, but one of them was. She became a devouring monster." Yitzi also showed a sad expression, her eyes red. "I killed her with my own hands and buried her properly." Isendale couldn't understand this. She couldn't help but ask, "Can't you save her?" Yitzi shook her head. "She was poisoned by the devouring realm. If we let her live, we'll become monsters too." Isendale couldn't say anything. She didn't dare to kill her own mother with her own hands. She had never even thought about it. Guzi said, "Father also found a lot of stone fruits, but he was robbed on the way back. He was killed by the people who sealed the mountain." Ding Ming slowly put down the jerky in his hand. He couldn't eat anymore. "Where's Sister Heezy?" Ding Ming still didn't want to give up. Guzi said, "She left last year." "Just like you, Ding Ming, there's a merchant who said that they would take in alien refugees and send them to the Holy Grail Federation to work. She went, but she hasn't come back yet." Ding Ming's gaze also fell to the ground. He looked a bit absent-minded. Isendale noticed the anger in Ding Ming's eyes. It seemed that Sister Heezy's experience wasn't as simple as Guzi said. After a long time, Ding Ming sighed slightly. "But you're still alive. That's a blessing in disguise." Guzi smiled again. "Brother Ding Ming, it's good that you're back. It's okay, we can survive." Ding Ming waved his hand tiredly. "Guzi, you and Yitzi go do your work. I want to rest for a while." Guzi immediately got up. "Brother Ding Ming, rest well. I'll go catch some fish for you. Let's have a good meal tonight." Yitzi also got up. "I'll go too. I want to catch some fish for Brother Ding Ming and let him have a good meal." The two of them left immediately. When they were out of the door, Isendale carefully asked, "Is Sister Heezy dead?" Ding Ming's expression didn't change. I'm pretty sure she's dead. Eisendel didn't understand. Why do you say that? Ding Ming suddenly raised his head and murmured with a sigh. The traders Guzi mentioned are actually black market dealers. On the surface, they say they're recruiting workers, but in fact, they're selling these laborers to the black market as slaves. These slaves can't enter the Federation in the end. They're all sent to refugee camps and exiled to the peripheral planets to work as laborers. Eisendel was silent. I've also heard that the survival rate of laborers on the exile planet is less than 10%. Ding Ming sighed. I was kidnapped from here and sold to the slave market. Eisendel was stunned again. But you survived. Ding Ming sighed even more heavily. It's because of their kindness that I'm still alive. Eisendel said, Oh. Ding Ming said, When I first came here, I was so hungry that I fainted and was washed into the river. The siblings fished me out of the river and saved me with what was left of the family's tofu. I later found out that the tofu I ate was Sister Heezy's food for 2 days. She starved for 2 days and 2 nights because of me. She was only a teenager at that time. Eisendel also sighed slightly. I never thought that these refugees would live such a painful life. The Federation always says that refugees are inferior and don't deserve to occupy public resources. Ding Ming said, Inferior people are also human. What's wrong with them wanting to live? But those shameless black market dealers still want to sell them. As he spoke, he pulled a ball of jerky into his mouth and chewed, gritting his teeth as if he was eating the meat of a black market dealer. Eisendel couldn't smell it. It's so smelly. Ding Ming glanced at her and said, The two of them must have risked their lives to find these skewers in the polluted area. I'm sure they wouldn't be willing to eat them and would store them for emergencies. They're only willing to give them to their loved ones. They treat us like family. Eisendel stared at him and said sincerely, Can you give me some? Ding Ming tore off a piece of jerky and handed it to her. Eisendel put it in her mouth and chewed slowly. This time, she didn't show any disgust. Instead, she said calmly, It's not as bad as I thought. I even think it's a little fragrant. Ding Ming looked at her and couldn't help but smile. I'm curious. How come you're best friends with someone like Ling Xingqi? Eisendel said. Am I different from her? Ding Ming nodded. Yes. At least you're willing to sit in this place and eat this kind of food. But I don't think she can do it. Eisendel blushed and lowered her head shyly. Ding Ming's gaze made her feel a little embarrassed, and even her heartbeat sped up. She suddenly recalled last night's craziness. The two of them were inseparable from each other, that kind of sweetness and happiness. The relationship between a man and a woman was sometimes really strange. Two people who originally had no connection with each other suddenly had a kind of tacit understanding and could consider problems from each other's standpoint. Eisendel suddenly said, I found that you're different from many of the old monsters of origin. Ding Ming asked curiously, What's different? Eisendel sighed. I've seen many famous masters, but very few of them came from refugee camps like you. Although those people also experienced a lot of hardship, they couldn't go back to the past after they became famous. But you're not like that. You're still thinking about this place. You didn't even go back to the Federation and came here to look for them. At least you didn't forget about them. Ding Ming smiled. Maybe I'm a wretch and like to live like this. No, Eisendel said seriously. Some men look ferocious on the surface, but they have kindness in their bones. It's just that there are very few of them. Ding Ming smiled. You think too highly of me. I just have nowhere to go now. Such a big thing happened in the Fertile Chalk system. The Starbow group must be looking for me all over the world. I can't find anyone here, so I'm happy to have some peace and quiet. Eisendel couldn't help but be infected by his optimism. Can I stay here for a while? Ding Ming looked at her meaningfully. Can you stay here? Eisendel's arrogance came up. I cultivated to the level of a battle saint. What kind of difficulties have I not experienced? Besides, after eating such precious food, I should do 1 or 2 things for them. The jerky tastes good. Give me some more. I'm a little hungry. I find you more pleasing to the eye now. Ding Ming threw the jerky to her. Eisendel flipped her hair. I'm the most pleasing to the eye. You just didn't like it before. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. I've seen what I should and shouldn't see. There's no such thing as disliking it. Isendale threw a skewer of jerky at his face. Are all straight men like you so straightforward? Don't you know how to make a girl happy? You're the alloy Demon King. I'll just call you Demon King from now on. Ding Ming looked indifferent. Up to you. As long as you're willing to stay here and help the two of them, you can call me whatever you want. As he said this, Ding Ming's eyes fell on the satchel at her waist. Isendale immediately became alert. What? Are you thinking about my baby again? Don't even think about it. The two ate the jerky for a while and chatted for a while. The sky gradually darkened. Goozy and Yeetzy finally came back with a few skewers of fresh fish. Chapter 7:14. The night was getting darker, and the starlight covered the dry land with a layer of silver frost, making the clear river glow. Goozy made a bonfire by the river. Yeetzy skewered large fish with her fishing spear and roasted them. Although she did not add any seasoning, the smell was enough to arouse anyone's appetite. Isendale could not help but laugh. It's strange. I haven't felt hungry in a long time, but today I want to eat at least 10 of these fish. Hearing this, Goozy was very happy. If you like, we can catch more. Ding Ming was also roasting the fish. I remember that there were not many fish in this river before. How did you catch so many at once? Goozy obviously could not answer this question. He could only smile foolishly. I don't know, but recently a lot of fish have been washed down from the upper reaches of the river. Isendale also felt strange. Food is so scarce here, but you two have grown so strong. Your bodies should not be lacking nutrition for a long time. Goozy smiled. Yes, Yeetzy and I have always been thin. Recently, we have become much stronger. Ding Ming put down his fishing spear and asked seriously, have you been eating or drinking something different recently? Yiko hesitated and said, not really. I just exchanged some blueberry plants for some nutrient solution in the town in the north. After drinking it, I felt that my body was extraordinarily strong. Ding Ming immediately became alert. Who did you exchange with? Yeetzy said, a merchant from the market. He came from the Holy Grail Federation. Ding Ming did not ask any more questions. Instead, he opened his telekinetic vision and released a telekinetic dot. In an instant, he saw through the siblings' body functions and operating conditions. Ding Ming suddenly sighed. You are not poisoned. Goozy and Yeetzy looked at each other, not understanding what he meant. Ding Ming continued, but you took drugs like oxytocin, which cause your bodies to grow too fast. It seems that there is something wrong with the blood-generating agents. I don't know what the black market dealers are up to. Are you going to sell the people on this planet as slaves again? Isendale asked in surprise. Ding Ming shook his head and said, if you want to recruit workers, you can just trick them with a few words or forcefully capture them. There's no need to waste so much effort. It seems that those damn peddlers are playing tricks again. Isendale asked, do you want to go and take a look? Ding Ming nodded. Of course we have to go. He hated this group of black market traders and slave traders. Thinking back to his days in the refugee camp, the coolies sometimes killed each other because of survival problems, but these people in the black market still wanted to eat people even if they were full. In the past, he could not resist, but now that he had the strength, he naturally would not sit and watch. Ding Ming suddenly turned to Isendale and asked, you should have some supplies with you, right? Isendale completely understood what he meant. She reached out to open her satchel and took out small metal boxes. They were all standard supplies like nutrient solutions and healing agents. Judging from the labels, they were all from the Holy Grail Federation. Young Mistress indeed had good stuff. There were 20 boxes in total, with 500 tubes in each box. This was enough for the brother and sister to survive for a long time. Isendale seemed to feel that this was not enough. She took out a few sets of galactic clothes and some standard weapons from her satchel. This made the brother and sister very happy. They held the clothes and the photoelectric guns and gestured nonstop. Ding Ming looked at her and exclaimed, you really have everything in your satchel. Isendale smiled softly. She saw deep gratitude in Ding Ming's eyes. However, Goozy obviously realized something. Brother Ding Ming, are you in town? Ding Ming had already stood up. Goozy, you guys stay here. We'll be back soon. After walking 30 kilometers upstream from the river beside the village, they arrived at the so-called town. In fact, Dingming also had an impression of this town. It used to be quite prosperous. There were tens of thousands of people in the town. Everyone usually hunted and gathered for a living. However, the streets of the town were now empty at night, and it was eerily dark. Isendale stood beside a dilapidated two-story bungalow and looked around carefully. That's not right. According to what you said, there should at least be people here, right? But there's no one here now. Although it was late at night, and there weren't many people in the town, there was no one in the houses. Where are the natives? Isendale suddenly pouted at Dingming. Someone's coming over there. Dingming also noticed that at the end of the street, two men carrying photoelectric guns were slowly walking towards them. Judging from their attire, they were not from this place. Sigh, there's no one here. Why are we patrolling in the middle of the night? You don't understand. Boss wants to see if there are still people from the nearby villages coming here. Oh, they're long gone. I heard from them a few days ago that Boss wants to leave after this. There's no more profit in this place. That's not necessarily true. Yesterday, the starship said that the radar detected void spirit rays in the sky above Thousand Sails Star. Maybe a big shot from the devouring world came here. It's always right to come out and take a look. Dingming and Isendale exchanged a look. There's a starship here? Looks like this is an opportunity. The two of them did not say much and used their martial arts to hide. Dingming used his manipulation art. Even if he stood in front of the two men, they would not notice him. After strolling around the town, the two of them walked toward the church in the center of the town. The first floor of the church was brightly lit and spacious. Looking through the window, there were quite a number of people inside. They were all tall and strong men eating and drinking together. There were many empty wine bottles on the ground, and several large tables were filled with cooked chicken, duck, and fish. There were a total of 16 people in the room. Isendale hesitated. Who are these people? They don't look like locals. Dingming said in a low voice. If I'm not mistaken, they're either mercenaries or pirates. They're more likely to be pirates. Isendale's interest was immediately piqued. I haven't seen the legendary pirates yet. Not interesting at all. Dingming's expression was ugly. Look over there. Following his gaze, Isendale saw a group of people lying on the ground in the dark southeast corner of the church. They were all naked native women and looked very weak. It seemed that they had not eaten for a long time. What happened next made Isendale furious. She could clearly see that these pirates had eaten and drunk enough, so when they had nothing to do, they would casually drag a woman away to vent their beastly desires. A dozen or so of them could do whatever they wanted. As long as they were happy, they would casually feed the women with food scraps. It felt like they were abusing animals. Isendale was about to lose her temper when Dingming stopped her. Forget it. I'll do it. You just watch. Very quickly, Dingming's figure appeared at the entrance of the church. The pirates who were in the midst of their lewd activities were suddenly startled. Their reactions were quite fast. They quickly stood up and raised their weapons, aiming their muzzles at Dingming. The leader, a fat man with big ears, was probably the leader of this group. He shouted, "Who's there?" Dingming walked in casually. "I'm just passing by. I'm here to ask for something to eat and drink." Seeing Dingming's tattered clothes, the leader could not help but sneer. "Oh, here comes another one." Dingming asked curiously, "What's wrong? Are you arresting someone?" The leader sneered. "You talk too much. How dare you come to us? Arrest him." Immediately, two pirates stepped forward and pressed down on Dingming's shoulders. "Boy, behave yourself. Otherwise, I'll break your arms." It was obvious that they couldn't twist it. Not to mention twisting it, they couldn't even press it down. Dingming didn't even need to exert any strength. The two pirates were immediately bounced off and sat on the ground. Dingming walked to the dining table in the center. He reached out and grabbed a braised pork hoof, stuffed it in his mouth, and chewed loudly. Wow, the food's not bad, guys. The pirates were stunned. They were not impressed by Dingming's courage, but by the fact that Dingming could swallow a pork hoof as big as a casserole in one gulp. His facial muscles squirmed a few times, and then he spat out the bones. This way of eating was awesome. The leader's face darkened, and he did not say anything. However, he secretly made a cutting gesture. Everyone understood. They picked up their guns and fired randomly. The church lit up, and dozens of laser beams were all aimed at Ding Ming. Ding Ming did not care at all. He continued to eat the various delicacies on the table. These pirates really knew how to enjoy themselves. They even got a whole roasted lamb. Ding Ming could let them go, but he would not let this one go. After this round of shooting, the whole roasted lamb was eaten until only the skeleton was left. This time, Ding Ming turned his head and said, "Have you had enough fun?" Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the concentrated power of the photoelectric gun couldn't even tear apart the tattered clothes on his body. Quite a number of people had already realized that this short man in front of them was definitely not an aborigine. He was an ironclad, strong esper. Someone saw that the situation was not good. He threw away his gun and turned to run. Ding Ming raised his head and looked at the man. "Huh, friend, you're running in the wrong direction." Wherever he looked, a dozen pirates flew into the air. It was as if they were pulled by a pair of invisible hands and thrown out of the church door in the opposite direction. Every time one of them flew out, there would be a shrill scream outside. Ding Ming believed that with Isendale's temper, she would not show mercy to these shameless pirates. In the blink of an eye, only the leader was left on the first floor of the church. The leader's laser gun fell to the ground. His hands were trembling. Big brother, I didn't treat you well. The food here. Please eat as you please, use as you please." Ding Ming turned his head and looked at him playfully. "Let me ask you, which force in outer space do you belong to?" The leader said nervously, We don't belong to any force." "Ha ha." Ding Ming picked up a chicken leg, put it in his mouth, and spat it out. The leader immediately screamed like a pig being slaughtered. The chicken bone shattered his right knee. He fell to the ground and screamed desperately. Ding Ming picked up another chicken leg and continued to eat. "You could be dishonest, but I want to see how many legs you have." Chapter 7:15. Big Brother, we're really not a force from outer space. The leader's voice sounded like he was crying. Ding Ming didn't bother to ask any more questions. With a gentle suction of his palm, a sharp table knife on the table appeared between his fingers. After that, Ding Ming slowly squatted down in front of him. The leader was scared out of his wits when he saw the shiny table knife. Pirates were all about eating, drinking, and having fun. If one or two key parts of their body were missing, what was the point of doing well in the future? "Big brother, I really don't have any force," the leader said in tears. Ding Ming found that this guy didn't seem to be lying. "Let me ask you, where are the people in this town?" The leader hurriedly said, "They were taken away." Ding Ming asked, "Where are they sent to?" The leader said, the starship. Ding Ming waved the table knife. "Where is the starship?" The leader said, "North of the town, 50 kilometers from here." Ding Ming continued, "Why did you take them away?" The leader said, "I don't know. Boss told us to do it." Ding Ming frowned and said, "Who is your boss? Tell me his name." The leader said, "Hu Biao." Why does this name sound so familiar? Ding Ming suddenly remembered that it was Hu Biao who led the team that massacred the refugees of planet KV-303. Later, his arms and heart were destroyed by Ding Ming in his base on Cypress Grove. Ding Ming didn't expect that this guy was still alive and had come to Thousand Sails Star. Ding Ming sneered. "So you're from the Extreme Pirate Corps." In fact, the Extreme Pirate Corps had long ceased to exist. When Ding Ming killed everyone on Cypress Planet, Lu Ming and the other leaders had been killed by him. Later, their successors could not stand the actions of these pirates, so they were expelled from Cypress Planet. Hu Biao was one of the dregs, and he led his people to Zeta 2 Star Field. It seemed that he had been too lenient back then, allowing this scourge to escape to this place. Ding Ming stood up. Wherever he looked, the group of women in the corner had all recovered their strength by using telekinesis. One by one, they got up. Ding Ming looked at the leader with a broken leg and sneered, "I can spare your life, but it's none of my business whether others kill you or not." The leader was horrified to find that the natives had picked up the photoelectric guns from the ground. These women had been humiliated by them. Now that they had weapons in their hands, it was easy to imagine what would happen to him. F***CK, the leader murmured. Ding Ming walked out of the church. Outside, Corpses were strewn all over the ground. Every corpse had a hole in their heart. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. I say, you're really cruel. You didn't even let them go when they were dead. Isendale gritted her teeth and said, scum who bully women deserve to die. Cough, cough. Ding Meng felt a chill for no reason. His relationship with Isendale was similar. Was she going to use extreme methods too? Where are we going now? Isendale asked. Ding Meng said decisively, let's go to the starship and see what they're doing. As soon as the two left, the sound of photoelectric guns firing rang out in the church. The leader was probably blown up. There was no starlight in the depths of the Gobi Desert under the silent night. Instead, it was misty drizzle. In fact, this place was like a wet and muddy swamp in the devouring sector, which was the so-called polluted area. On the muddy grassland, a shabby medium-sized transport ship was anchored in the quagmire. The entire ship was brightly lit, but Ding Meng and Isendale were undoubtedly disappointed. It was unrealistic to expect this unmarked starship to return to the Federation. The connecting cabin was wide open, and a group of fully armed pirates were moving large containers down the lift, pushing them deeper into the swamp. Isendale used her origin energy to sense carefully. She could not help but be shocked. These boxes were filled with living people. At a glance, she knew that they were the natives. However, these people were exceptionally large, as if they had been carefully cultivated and fed to be fat and big. They were living giant pigs. An ominous feeling rose in Isendale's heart. They are. Ding Meng's face was very ugly. The devouring sector's demon generals are flesh-eaters. They specialize in devouring living humans to complete their evolution. Isendale said in a low voice, we can't let them feed people to the monsters. Ding Meng nodded. I'll leave the pirates outside to you. I'll go inside the starship. Then he shot toward the connecting cabin like an arrow. With their skills, these ordinary pirates could not see them at all. After Ding Meng boarded the ship, he rushed directly to the command hall. Along the way, there were armed soldiers, but these people were completely invisible to him. When the Terminator released his psychic power, no one could see his real body. They directly fainted and fell to the ground. The alarms on the transport ship kept ringing. The alloy door of the command hall was quickly kicked open by Ding Meng. He was too lazy to pay attention to the staff at the control desk. He saw a group of people sitting in the lounge, among them a few old men. The leader was Hu Biao from the pirate team. Hu Biao's arms were fitted with alloy prosthetics. There was no aura of origin energy on his body. He had indeed been crippled by Ding Meng. When he saw the intruder clearly, Hu Biao was shocked. Ding Meng, it's you. Ding Meng sneered. I was too kind. It was my fault that I didn't kill you completely back then. I didn't expect you to transport the residents here to the devouring sector like animals. Hu Biao sneered. Ding Meng, do you think you can order me around with your mediocre skills? You came at the right time. It's time to settle the score with Bogus Star. Seeing Hu Biao's fearless look, Ding Meng scanned the old men with his psychic power. He couldn't help but laugh. Hu Biao, is this the backer you're relying on? Hu Biao immediately turned his head to look at one of the hale and hearty old men in a suit. Old Nian, this is the brat who destroyed Brother Ming's extreme thief corps back then. I'll leave it to you this time. This brat is at most a war elder. It was obvious that his information was too outdated. His knowledge of Ding Meng was still the same as it was 8 years ago. Of course, he couldn't be blamed for being uninformed. The main reason was that Ding Meng's current reputation was only known by a small number of people in the top circle. A lowly character like him didn't even have the qualifications to know. Old Nian took 2 steps forward and looked at Ding Meng with interest. You're quite interesting. Kid, you're only in your 30s. How dare you meddle in our business? Ding Meng sighed. You'd better tell me your family. Maybe I'll consider letting you live. If you don't, I'm sorry, but I can only think of you as the same kind of trash as Hu Biao. Arrogant. Old Nian's face sank. What qualifications do you have to ask about the Nian family's business? Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. He had never heard of the Nian family. Which Nian family? Ignorant. Old Nian didn't hesitate. He took a step forward and slapped him. Let me teach you a lesson first. Do you know how to respect your elders? His palm was red all over. Obviously, he cultivated the thermodynamic system. As he moved, the surrounding temperature rose sharply. It seemed that he had some attainments in origin energy. But so what? If he encountered a monster like Ding Ming, he would be digging his own grave. In the eyes of Hu Biao and the others, this palm strike was extremely powerful. However, in Ding Ming's eyes, it couldn't be any slower. He didn't even have the slightest interest in dodging. The palm struck Ding Ming's forehead like lightning. At least, Hu Biao and the others thought that the palm had hit. However, for some reason, old Nian's feet slipped and he staggered over his head. He couldn't stop in time and fell to the ground. Ding Ming helplessly shook his head and slowly walked toward Hu Biao. You're already so old, yet you're still so careless. Sai, stop right there. Another old man in a gray mandarin gown shouted sternly. Ding Ming was amused. I'm not going to stop. What are you going to do about it? The old man in the gray jacket was enraged. He spread out his palms and slammed them together. This was a classic ice-type technique. Unfortunately, the dark ice energy that he had imagined would turn Ding Ming into an ice sculpture didn't appear. Ding Ming was still walking slowly, perfectly fine. The man in the gray jacket almost suspected that he wasn't circulating his origin energy. He once again gathered all his strength and pushed his palms forward. He had clearly released his ice-type origin energy, but there was nothing in the air. There was no ice wall, no white gas, no fluctuations. He had cultivated ice-type origin energy for over 100 years, but he couldn't immediately explain what was going on. Actually, the reason was very simple. Ding Ming's telekinesis had already formed a telekinesis field that controlled the entire command center. As soon as he exerted his power, Ding Ming also secretly released his origin energy. The heat instantly vaporized his ice-type origin energy, but it happened too quickly. No one present could detect it, nor could they see it. In the end, the difference in strength was too great. Even if you wanted to fight, you couldn't. There's something strange about this kid. The man in the gray jacket had a bad feeling. At this moment, the old man had already gotten up and turned around, preparing to launch another sneak attack from behind. Ding Ming sighed helplessly. I've already said that you're quite old. You look like you're over 100 years old. You dare to be so arrogant when you're just a combat master? He suddenly turned around and exhaled. Just this casual exhalation caused the old man to feel as if he had slammed into an iron wall. His entire body was sent flying dozens of meters before slamming into a control panel. More than half of the alloy control panel had collapsed, and sparks of electricity crackled from it. The old man collapsed to the ground. It looked like he had been knocked unconscious. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. What kind of godlike technique was this? How could it knock someone unconscious with a single breath? The man in the gray jacket panicked. Everyone, let's attack together. He still had some insight and knew that there was something strange going on. This brat in front of him wasn't weak. He definitely wasn't a battle sovereign. He was very likely a high-level battle master or even a general-level battle warrior. If the 5 of them attacked together, they might still have a chance. Seeing the 5 old men surround him, their hands and feet flashing wildly with red and blue light, Ding Ming couldn't be bothered to distinguish their elements and battle techniques. He simply stood there without moving and crossed his arms in front of his chest. Come. I want to see what kind of tricks you guys have up your sleeves. Chapter 716. The 5 old men were clearly well-coordinated. One of their fists struck Ding Ming's face, 2 of their palms struck Ding Ming's chest, and the remaining 2 kicked Ding Ming's right shoulder and left temple. If a normal origin energy user would take so many blows to their vitals, they would at least be knocked back, if not fatally wounded. However, Ding Ming was still standing there like a piece of metal, completely unaffected. Hu Biao had originally thought that he could definitely take down Ding Ming, but now he was completely dumbfounded. The combined attacks of 5 combat masters had actually been unable to shake him in the slightest. 8 years ago, Ding Ming had given off an unfathomable feeling, and 8 years later, he was still the same. At that moment, Ding Ming's lips curled into a strange smile. You're already so old, yet you're still doing this kind of shady business. There's no point in keeping you alive. The five old men instinctively retreated, but they discovered that no matter how much force they exerted, their bodies were no longer under their control. It was as if they were being sucked in by some kind of invisible force. Suddenly, the hands and feet of the five old men that had struck Ding Ming transformed into red origin flames. This was not the diamond star fusing art, but rather the simplest form of origin energy release. The origin flames that Ding Ming had released were tens of thousands of degrees Celsius. How could combat masters possibly withstand such heat? The five old men instantly collapsed to the ground, rolling, howling, and struggling. They had indeed trained bitterly for over 100 years, but in an instant, they were all crippled. Hu Biao's entire body went cold. He had spent a lot of money to invite these experts from the Federation, but in the end, Ding Ming hadn't even had to do anything, and they had all been crippled. With a plop, Hu Biao proactively knelt down. Ding Ming stared at him coldly. Speak. How do you want to die? Hu Biao immediately kowtowed and said, Brother Ding, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please spare my life. This time, Ding Ming did not even give him a chance to explain. He raised his hand and spat out a stream of origin flame. The torrent-like heat instantly engulfed the entire resting area. The sofas, coffee tables, carts, steel plates, and even the five old men and Hu Biao were all turned into ashes in this torrent. The resting area was also turned into a deep pit. The entire command hall was silent. The remaining 30 or so staff members were dumbfounded. No one dared to move. The huge deterrents had suppressed their fear. Everyone knew that in front of such a ferocious person, running away would only result in faster death. Ding Ming turned around again and waved his hand through the air. The unconscious Elder Nien was sucked over to him. After injecting a bit of telekinesis, the old man woke up. Ding Ming grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Did you inject oxytocin into the residents of Thousand Sail Star when you captured them? Elder Nien obviously did not know what had just happened. He could not help but be shocked and angry. Little bastard, how dare you provoke the Nien family? You're tired of living. Then you could disappear too. Ding Ming exerted a little force, and Elder Nien suddenly turned into a human-shaped fireball. The fireball burned for 5 seconds and finally turned into wisps of smoke. The command hall was terrifyingly quiet. Ding Ming's gaze fell on a staff member beside the control panel. You come here. This person was quite young. He seemed to be about the same age as Ding Ming. He was also wearing a suit and black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. He was probably a statistician. Ding Ming believed that the people working in the command hall must know the inside story. The statistician's entire body was trembling. He could barely move his feet. Trembling, he walked over to Ding Ming. What's your name? Ding Ming asked. The statistician said in a trembling voice, Ding Sheng. Ding Ming sighed. You really have a good name. Tell me, were these residents injected with oxytocin and turned into pigs? Ding Sheng lowered his head and said, Yes. Yes. Ding Ming said, Are you still human? You raised your own kind into pigs and then gave them to the flesh-eaters? Ding Sheng immediately knelt down. Big brother, I know what I'm doing is inhumane, but I'm short on money. My mother at home is waiting for me to give her money to fix her broken leg. Ding Ming looked at him. Hu Biao gave you money? Ding Sheng stammered, Yes. Yes. Ding Ming said, Then what's in it for Hu Biao? Ding Sheng said, Someone from the flesh-eaters gave him diamonds and martial arts manuals. So he asked these old men to help him. Ding Ming muttered. With Hu Biao's ability, he was still able to get such a job. It seems like Thousand Sail Star is no longer peaceful. The meaning of this was not something that a small fry like Ding Sheng could understand. Thousand Sail Star was the core of the Zeta 2 star field. Why was it the border between the Federation and the Flesh Eaters? This was not only because of the geographical location, but also because the influence of both sides in this place was very balanced. There were humans living here, but there were also world-devouring monsters. Most of the humans were hunters, and most of the monsters were low-level creatures. You fought, and I fought, and the two sides had coexisted for hundreds of years. However, now that the natives were being cultivated and fed to the monsters, it meant that flesh-eaters were forming in this place. This balance had been quietly broken. Thousand Sail Star would be occupied by the flesh-eaters sooner or later. This was the signal before a great war. The reason why there were flesh-eaters instead of great elders was simple. That way, the Federation would be able to see through it immediately, and the Federation would quickly send out a fleet or experts to suppress it. Ding Ming looked at Ding Sheng. From now on, I don't care what method you use. Make the natives return to normal. If you can't do that, I'll cultivate you into pigs and feed you to the monsters. Seeing that Ding Ming had changed his tone, Ding Sheng immediately looked up. Yes, brother. I will follow your instructions. At this moment, Izendel walked in from the main passage. Ding Ming hurriedly asked, "How was it?" Izendel clapped her hands. "No problem. I didn't kill the pirates. Let them heal these people." Ding Ming nodded. This woman's train of thought was very similar to his. The two of them walked to the control panel together. After fiddling with the control panel for a while, Ding Ming discovered that the starship's energy was very limited. It would be difficult to even fly to the Paradise Galaxy, let alone back to the Federation. This Hu Biao is probably not the only one who took this job. There should be other accomplices. Ding Ming came to this conclusion. Izendel also agreed. The Federation and the Flesh-Eaters have been peaceful for many years, but I heard that the Flesh-Eaters have never given up their determination to encroach on the Federation. Now that they're doing something on Thousand Sail Star, I'm guessing that something has happened to the Flesh-Eaters. At this moment, the alarm on the starship sounded urgently again. Red light flashed wildly in the command room, and the entire starship seemed to tremble slightly. Ding Ming turned his head and asked, "What's going on?" Ding Sheng hurriedly adjusted the screen and then looked shocked. The Flesh-Eaters are attacking. Ding Ming and Izendel walked forward to take a look. The reconnaissance radar had already displayed the real-time image on the screen. They saw a large number of Flesh-Eaters burrowing out of the swamp forest to the north, howling and swarming in the direction of the carrier. The pirates on the ground did not panic. 70 or 80 of them raised their weapons and began firing. All kinds of beams and energy bullets pierced through the night sky, looking very dazzling. Ding Ming frowned. "Isn't that scum Hu Biao working with them? Why are they attacking us now?" Ding Sheng said in a low voice, Maybe they didn't receive these people and thought we were in the way, so..." Ding Ming waved his hand impatiently. "What's in the way? Issue the order to wipe out these monsters." Ding Sheng did not dare to argue with him. He immediately turned around and operated the communication system on the main control panel. Ding Ming had seen the Flesh-Eaters before. These low-level Flesh-Eaters looked scary, but in fact, they could not withstand human technological weapons. These pirates had been in outer space for many years and were quite experienced in dealing with the Flesh-Eaters. They basically formed groups of 3 and formed a crossfire that swept back and forth. In an instant, large numbers of monsters fell, turning into pools of mud and poisonous liquid. "Ding Ming, look over here," Izendel suddenly said. Ding Ming looked at the other radar screen and realized that something was wrong. Under the night sky, the vegetation around them was slowly growing. The strangely shaped plants were constantly twisting and extending, like the ferocious teeth of the monsters, forming a huge encirclement from the outside. However, this change was not obvious and was not easy to notice. After the Flesh-Eaters were blasted into pieces by the energy bombs, they turned into mud. More and more mud accumulated, and the ground gradually disappeared. This was a classic Flesh-Eaters assimilation, turning the ground into a poisonous carpet, multiplying the combat power of the monsters. Sure enough, the Devourer monsters appeared in groups at the beginning, but now they were like waves, pressing over in waves. This scale had already surpassed the army of bone-armored monsters that they encountered on Planet Madison. The firepower of 70 or 80 photoelectric guns and 10 miniature energy cannons could no longer achieve the suppressive effect. An energy bomb blasted over, seemingly blowing up dozens of Flesh-Eaters, but it felt like a hole had been punched in the waves. However, This hole was quickly filled by the monsters behind it. The waves themselves were intact and continued to press forward. Ding Meng said decisively, "Start the engine and prepare to take off. Let the people on the ground return to the connecting cabin." Although these people were evil pirates, Ding Meng did not intend to give up. It was better to be killed than to be eaten by the monsters. A familiar scene quickly appeared. The monkey monsters on Madison indeed appeared in the group of monsters in the distance. The difference was that the monkeys did not have bone armor plating. They were purely made of flesh. The same thing was that the monkeys had green plant javelins in their hands, while the monkeys on Madison used pure white bone javelins. The green javelins were clearly some kind of powerful poison. When the monkeys raised their hands, the poisonous javelins rained down like a rainstorm in the night sky. Many people were caught off guard and were stabbed in the heart and brain. They immediately fell to the ground and rotted into green pus at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ding Meng said decisively, "It's too late. Close the connecting cabin and take off quickly." Chapter 717. Crystal flames spewed out from the bottom of the broken carrier, and the whole ship swayed as it rose into the air. An amazing scene finally appeared. Tens of thousands of monkeys threw their poisonous guns into the sky like a swarm of locusts. It felt as if a large net was covering the starship. Many of the poison spears were melted by the crystal flames from the engine, but most of the poison spears pierced into the outer layer of the steel plate. It was unknown what the poison spears were made of, but not only could they easily pierce into the alloy steel plate, but they also began to slowly melt after piercing into it, corroding the steel plate to the point that black smoke was coming out of it. The system sounded, "Warning, warning, the current damage of the ship is 8%. What the hell is this? Even the carrier ship can't stop it?" Isendale exclaimed. "Magic swamp poison, a strange poison that could devour the alloy steel plate." Ding Meng was also quickly fiddling with the screen. He helplessly found that this broken ship did not even have the most basic weapon system and energy defense system. It seemed that Hu Biao and the other pirates were really afraid of being poor and had come to this place to make money. "Brother, what do we do now?" Ding Sheng looked anxious. Obviously, he did not know how to deal with it. Ding Meng said in a low voice, "Lower the starship. Everyone, equip your armor and weapons. Gather at the rescue port. Everyone, prepare to go out and fight." Isendale was puzzled. "The damage is not high. Why don't we continue flying?" Ding Meng sighed. "We can't escape. You will soon understand." He didn't speak carelessly. At this time, the ground was completely invisible. It was filled with black monkeys shouting and throwing poison spears. The transport ship was like a lump of burnt coal, swaying and slowly sinking. At the same time, a series of mournful monster cries came from the dark sky. It sounded like the sharp whistling of a whistle. Just the sound alone was enough to make one's ears hurt. Taking a closer look, one could see black pterosaurs appearing in the night sky. They looked like miniature void spirit skates, and they also covered the sky and covered the sun. These pterosaurs spat out streams of green acid from their mouths. This was even more vicious than the poison spears. Whenever it hit a part of the starship, it would immediately burn a large hole in the steel plate. With both the ground and the sky attacking, it would be strange if the starship could fly out. It would be better to land and fight to the death with these monsters. As soon as the starship landed on the ground, the monkeys immediately swarmed over and drowned the starship. They smashed and hammered everywhere, a typical tactic of plundering the world-devouring insect sea. There were only 40 to 50 people left on the ship. Everyone knew that the odds were stacked against them. The moment the door to the rescue port was opened, everyone raised their photoelectric guns and opened fire. The group of monkeys fell one by one. However, this firepower couldn't last for too long. In just a minute, 3 to 5 monkeys approached. They grabbed a staff member and started to bite and beat her. That person was a woman. In the blink of an eye, her neck was bitten off. The monkeys behind her swarmed over. The woman was completely drowned out in her screams. Ding Meng sighed helplessly. In this kind of cruel battle, personal strength was very important. He had no time to care about other things. It was almost impossible to protect everyone. Eisendel also sighed. I heard the seniors say how cruel the world-devouring war is. I didn't believe it before. Today, I finally saw it for myself. Ding Meng said, this scale is considered small. These are all low-level warriors of the world-devouring army. If a real army of monsters attacked together, no matter how powerful a person was, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. Eisendel agreed. She could already imagine a scene. In the deep space, a large Federation fleet encountered hundreds of thousands of demons and flying dragons. Even if they used all their firepower, they wouldn't be able to withstand such a wave of death. In less than 5 minutes after the rescue port was opened, the dozens of people were all eaten up. Not even a trace of them was left. Eisendale immediately activated her pink mixed essence umbrella as a shield. At the same time, she expanded the scale of the shield by several times. Then, she circulated the ice element power evenly on the surface of the shield. Dingmeng also activated his diamond shield. However, Dingmeng's shield was spinning with a fiery red heat source. You go in front, Dingmeng said in a low voice. Eisendel rolled her eyes at him. Why should I be the shield? Dingmeng said. Use the cold winter ice dust storm to freeze these monsters and reduce the consumption. Eisendel immediately understood his intention. She secretly activated her martial arts. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in the night sky. Pieces of ice dust fell from the sky, covering a large area. These monkey monsters were turned into ice sculptures as soon as they rushed over. Although the low-level warriors couldn't pose a substantial threat to battle saints like Ding Meng, Eisendel was still secretly shocked. The monkeys were charging forward without fear of death. Slowly, with the two of them as the center, a large ice ball with a diameter of hundreds of meters was built in just a few minutes. If this consumption continued for a day and night, she would die of exhaustion sooner or later. Ding Meng quickly rose vertically from the inside of the ice ball. After summoning the wings of light, he broke through the ice and flew to the top of the ice ball. Looking around, he was still surrounded by a black tide. The monkeys began to climb the ice ball. Their intention was obvious. These monsters wanted to bite him to death. With this advantageous terrain, Ding Meng spread his hands. A fiery red light pillar, nearly 200 meters long, shot out from his palms. This was the heat essence. Ding Meng spun and shot it out in all directions. This was even more powerful than a railgun. Wherever the light pillar passed, monsters, plants, and even the poisonous carpet on the ground were all turned into fine powder. Black smoke rose from the entire rainforest, forming large patches of black fog that didn't disperse. This attack had a rather powerful deterrent effect. In an instant, the area within a radius of 200 meters was roasted into an empty space. Although there were still monkeys behind, they were no longer as aggressive as before. It seemed that these low-level monsters also had the intelligence of a demonic clan. At the very least, they knew the difference between life and death. Eisendale raised her head and shouted, "If you have fun killing up there, can you get me out too?" She actually had a way to go up, but she knew that Ding Meng practiced applied telekinesis. This way, it would be more convenient for him to ascend. Remove your shield. Ding Meng raised one of his palms, and Eisendale quickly flew up. After flying to the top, Ding Meng hugged her and brought her into the diamond shield. She then realized that Ding Meng's diamond shield not only had an amazing amount of origin energy, but also couldn't penetrate the shield. Clearly, this was the purification effect of the divine light. Ding Meng held Eisendale's slender waist with one hand and swept his right hand around a few times. The monsters were scattered, but the black fog in the air became thicker. Relying on this terrain, no matter how many low-level monsters like pterosaurs and monkeys there were, they would all die. This guy's strength was probably not as simple as a wargot's, right? Eisendale thought to herself. Just as she thought this, she suddenly realized that Ding Meng's left hand was very naughty. It was rubbing her waist through her clothes. Eisendale turned her head and rolled her eyes at him. I didn't expect you to be able to multitask. Ding Ming was so engrossed in killing the monsters that he didn't pay attention to her. Isendale stared at him coldly. It seems that the nickname Alloy Demon King isn't just for show. By the way, are people so direct these days? They don't talk and just touch? Ahem. Ding Ming was a little embarrassed. It feels good. I couldn't help it. Isendale rolled her eyes at him again, but she didn't dare to push his hand away. If she did, she might fall down. However, Ding Ming had already wiped out most of the monsters and poisoned carpet. Isendale asked again, "Why are there so many monsters here?" Ding Ming then said seriously, "We used too much energy to break into the starship just now. It has already alerted the demon generals here. Plus, these monsters aren't real monsters." Isendale was surprised. "You killed so many of them, but they aren't monsters?" Ding Ming looked at the black fog in the distance. "They are all transformed by the demon race. Once they are attacked, they will return to their original form. Only by destroying their immortal apertures can they be completely killed." He knew that Isendale wouldn't understand if he explained this to her, so he pointed into the distance. "You will see it soon." Sure enough, the black fog that had been condensed in the air suddenly erupted with a very strong aura. This aura was not something that the small monsters could compare to. A shadow suddenly floated out of the black fog. It was a standing tiger with black fur. It had the basic characteristics of a human, just like the Netherworld Demonis. However, it hadn't cultivated a real human immortal aperture because its face was blank and the wings on its back were slightly narrow. The tiger suddenly let out a series of strange squeaks. Ding Ming smiled. Sure enough, Isendale was curious. "What is it saying?" Ding Ming said, "It just sensed our energy and thought that we were suitable targets to devour, so it came to kill us." The tiger's voice changed again, this time into human language. "It really is a high-level human origin ability user. The heavens are really helping me. This time, I can finally evolve." Ding Ming said, "Your disciples and grand disciples have all been killed. Do you think that you can defeat me just because you have an immortal aperture?" The tiger was angry. "Ignorant human. My immortal aperture is enough to kill you, human generals." Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. "I'm curious. Thousand Sails Star has always been a border planet. You actually have the guts to hide here. Do you really think that the Federation fleet can't find you?" The tiger raised its head and laughed. "Aha, ignorant junior. I was sent by the sect master. What do I have to fear from a small planet like Thousand Sails Star?" Ding Ming and Isendale looked at each other. This guy was so arrogant. It was very thought-provoking. Even a predatory sect master like Lung Yin wouldn't dare to hide on Thousand Sails Star so openly. This guy was just a demon general. Where did he get the guts to do so? Ding Ming said in a low voice. "Who is your sect master?" The tiger said, "You will know when I devour you." As soon as it finished speaking, it flapped its wings and shot over like an arrow. Isendale sneered. "Demon King, you don't have to do anything. Let me deal with this arrogant thing." Chapter 718. Isendale's confidence was based on the fact that she was immune to toxins. The tiger slapped her in midair, and a thick, green, fan-shaped wind appeared in the air. After the battle with the energy crystals, everyone now had a preliminary understanding of the people in the devouring world. Their toxins were particularly powerful. If you were immune to toxins, then the source energy of these monsters was nothing to be afraid of. Isendale's mixed element umbrella opened again. She had learned the essence of Ding Ming's technique. She stood still, and when the wind came, the shield rotated slightly, and the wind was immediately dissipated. When the tiger slapped her a second time, Isendale's arm suddenly grew several meters long, and her 5 fingers formed a claw. With a crisp sound, the tiger howled and flew back, green blood splattering in the air. When he steadied himself, he found that there were 5 bloody holes in his chest. It was clear that Isendale's finger strength was very strong. You monster! You can even change shape." The tiger was shocked. Isendale sneered. "Hee, you overestimate yourself." The tiger raised his head and roared. He flapped his wings and flew over again. This time, he didn't slap her. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out black mucus. Then he formed two claws and pounced at his opponent. His aura also increased by a lot. He was using his unique skill, and Isendel couldn't deal with it the same way. She waved her hand, and a sky-blue icicle as thick as an arm flew toward the black mucus. Her ice source energy wasn't just a single energy source. The icicle began to spin as soon as it touched the mucus. It felt like a rotating shield that absorbed the toxins. Moreover, it was even more powerful and showed no signs of slowing down. Few human origin ability users could deal with the strange toxins in the devouring world so easily. When the tiger saw the icicle flying toward him, he quickly flew to the left to dodge. It was fine if he didn't dodge, but once he dodged, he was in trouble. In the tiger's vision, there was only Ding Meng left on the iceberg. When he felt that something was wrong, Isendel had already appeared above his head like a ghost. She hit him in the head with one hand and knocked him down. Then, Isendel waved her hand again, and another dark blue icicle flew down like a missile. This time it was impossible to dodge. With a muffled sound, the sharp icicle pierced the tiger's lower abdomen and nailed him to the iceberg. His body spread out and was covered in a thin layer of white ice. His aura instantly weakened by more than half. Of course, it wasn't because he was too weak. It was mainly because he was unlucky to have met Ding Meng and Isendale, who were old monsters of origin energy. The gap between a demon general and a war god was huge. You guys. The tiger's pupils were already glowing white. It looked like he couldn't make it. Isendel landed and looked at him maliciously. You dare to eat people with such little strength? Let me send you on your way. She was just about to attack when Ding Meng flew down and squatted in front of the tiger. It's not easy to evolve into a demon general. If your soul is destroyed, you won't even be able to return to the devouring world. At this time, the tiger's limbs had already begun to change. His flesh and blood gradually rotted, turning into liquid venom that was half flesh and half pus. Ding Meng said in a low voice, "Which sect in the devouring world are you from?" The tiger laughed coldly. "Shameless human, don't even think about getting any information about my sect master." Ding Meng thought for a moment and said, "If you're not from the Sevenfold Mountain clan, then I'll have to send you on your way." The tiger spat disdainfully. "Tui, the Sevenfold Mountain clan? What is that? It's far inferior to my sect." Ding Meng looked at him with interest. "It sounds like your sect is quite famous. There are only a few major sects in the devouring world that are comparable to the Sevenfold Mountain clan: Sacred Realm, Spirit Mountain, Immortal Shadow, and Spectre. It seems that your use of energy transformation is quite good. You're from the Spectre family, right?" These four sects were quite famous in the devouring world, just like the Federation's Glorious Star Rainbow and the Empire's Apocalypse Crimson Moon. They called themselves the Four Great Immortal Sects. Of course, Lung Yin had transmitted this information to Ding Meng earlier. The devouring world was very different from the Federal Empire's conglomerates. Although the cultivation of origin energy seemed to be very varied, it was still very much the same. Origin energy formed the origin. The origin gave birth to the cultivation technique, and the cultivation technique transformed into martial arts. The general principles were similar. However, the sects of the devouring world were different. The Sacred Domain was good at refining origin power, which was a true orthodox sect in the devouring world. The Spirit Mountain was mainly good at forging formations and magic treasures. The Immortal Sect had a unique demonic cultivation method. The Demon Shadow was unique in terms of poison and resources. In short, the devouring world was truly diverse and strange. It had all kinds of things. This was also the reason why it was difficult to unite the devouring world. The problem was that ordinary humans definitely wouldn't know about this. As such, the tiger looked at Ding Meng in shock. He didn't expect Ding Meng to know about this. "Who are you?" Ding Meng calmly said, "You're about to die. If you answer my questions honestly, you might be able to keep your life." "In your dreams." The tiger was obviously the stubborn type. He simply closed his eyes and waited for death. Ding Meng sighed helplessly and slowly stood up. There was no need for him or Isendale to attack this demonic general. It would completely turn into pus in, at most, 5 minutes. Isendale also waved her hand to retrieve her ice energy. The huge iceberg slowly melted. If it weren't for the damage carrier, no one would believe what had just happened in the open space. When the demonic general completely turned into a pool of venom, the poisonous plants around gradually withered and died. The entire land returned to its original Gobi topography. Even the haze in the sky faded away, and hazy starlight could be vaguely seen. Isendale walked over. "Why are you asking about this monster sect?" Ding Meng said. "This guy can use things like diamond cultivation techniques to charm Hu Biao and the others into betraying humans. Do you think it's a coincidence?" Isendale said hesitantly. "The Devouring World sect wants to cause trouble on Thousand Sails Star?" Ding Meng sighed. "I'm afraid it's not as simple as that. He said he was sent by their sect leader. It's probably been a while. He wants to slowly take over Thousand Sails Star. Why do you think he's making preparations?" Isendale immediately understood what he meant. Even if the Devouring World sect has the guts, their leader isn't a fool, right? Does he really think that the Federation's patrol fleet can't detect this place? Ding Ming said, "If he can hide here, doesn't he have a backup plan?" Isendale's expression changed. "You mean we should just wait here?" Ding Ming suddenly raised his head and let out a long breath. "No need to wait. They're already here." Following his gaze, Isendale also saw a white dot flashing in the night sky. If she was distracted for a moment, she might have thought it was starlight. However, Isendale was also very experienced. She immediately recognized that it wasn't a monster from the Devouring World sect, but a flying unit of the Federation. "It's a spaceship," Isendale exclaimed in surprise. Ding Meng's face darkened, and he didn't answer. He only secretly restrained his origin energy aura. It was obvious that he didn't want to expose himself. Isendale obviously noticed this too. "What's wrong? You don't seem very happy." Ding Meng sighed. The commotion here was so big. The spaceship's radar must have detected it. Isendale said, "Isn't that good? If it's a patrol fleet spaceship, then we'll have hope of returning to the Federation." Her mouth was indeed a jinx. The spaceship was obviously coming for these coordinates. After the altitude decreased, both of them could clearly see that it was a thousand-eye spaceship. Its appearance was similar to a swordfish, but its scale was much smaller. This was a small reconnaissance spaceship of the same Federation. Its detection function was very advanced, not inferior to the Empire's Songqing. It served in all kinds of patrol fleets. Sure enough, after the thousand-eyed spaceship came to a stop, Ding Meng saw the extremely obvious symbol of the Federation's divine sword on the hull of the spaceship. 5 fully armed soldiers walked down from the connecting cabin. The auras of these 5 people were not strong, but they were carrying various detection equipment in their hands. They must have detected the movement here during their patrol. Isendale had already run over. Hey, you're just in time." The 5 soldiers were shocked, but after seeing who it was, the leader of the soldiers ordered his companions to put down their guns. "Don't mess around. This is a Federation origin energy user. We're on the same side." Judging from the soldiers' epaulettes, he was a sergeant. The sergeant looked very friendly. "Hello, miss. There was a strong energy fluctuation here just now. Was it you?" Isendale had to briefly describe what had just happened. The sergeant nodded thoughtfully. "I see. No wonder the radar was alerting us. We were also on a patrol and happened to be near the Zyrtl star field. That's why we rushed over immediately. Guys, get ready to work and send the information back to the fleet." The other 4 soldiers began to scan the ground with large and small instruments. Ding Meng knew that this was the usual practice of the patrol fleet. If they found anything unusual, they had to use the scanner to record it and send it back to the military database for analysis. "Can I take your spaceship back to your fleet?" Isendale explained patiently. "I was stranded on Thousand Sails Star in an accident." The sergeant was obviously very experienced in dealing with this kind of situation. "Miss, if you don't mind, please stand still. I need to verify your identity. If you're a citizen of the Federation, there won't be any problem." Then, he raised his wristwatch and generated a miniature screen. After a wave-like green ray scanned Isendale, The database quickly displayed her image and various information. The sergeant's expression suddenly changed, and his attitude became respectful. "So it's Miss Eisendale. Sorry for the disrespect." Eisendale looked pleased. She turned her head and called out to Ding Meng in the distance. "Let's go. We can go back now." Ding Meng, who was hiding in the darkness of the stone mountain, said coldly, "Wait, which Federation military patrol fleet do you belong to?" Chapter 719. Hearing Ding Meng's voice, the sergeant was a little unhappy. "Can't you see such an obvious spaceship and logo?" However, he did not show it on his face. He patiently explained, "Hello, sir. If you're a citizen of the Federation, you can naturally exercise your rights. You can take a military ship back to the Federation, but you have to verify your identity first." Ding Meng waved his hand and said, "Forget it. I don't plan to leave." The sergeant was stunned. How could there be such a strange person who did not want to go back to the Zeta 2 star zone? However, on second thought, it was normal. If he could kill a demon general, he must be at least a warlord. It would not be difficult for him to survive on a border planet like this. The sergeant was guessing, but Eisendale clearly understood Ding Meng's careful thoughts. First, he was worried about Gu Zi and his sister. Second, he was worried about exposing his location. Ding Meng had killed so many masters of the Starbow Group, and the Starbow Group was worried that they could not find him. If they really verified his identity now, they would undoubtedly sell their location. After all, the Starbow Group had a great influence in the military. "You really don't want to leave?" Eisendale asked hesitantly. Ding Meng said lightly, "You can go." Eisendale was silent. She really wanted to go back to the Federation as soon as possible. She was in a hurry, but she was reluctant to leave. As for why, specifically speaking, it was quite complicated. His close relationship with Ding Meng, his good impression of Eco, and the small amount of divine light energy he had obtained during this period of time, all sorts of factors were involved. Together, there was a faint feeling of parting. "Let's go together." Eisendale's tone sounded like she was begging. Ding Meng sighed and shook his head. "It's okay. You can go. I have other plans here." Eisendale also sighed. "How about this? I will go back first and then find a ship to take you, Guzi, and Yitzi away together. What do you think?" Her eyes were a little gloomy, but there was also some anticipation. Ding Meng pondered for a long time before saying, "Okay." Eisendale's eyes immediately brightened, and her tone became excited. "Then you must wait for me here, Demon King." Ding Meng could not help but nod with a smile. The sergeant was surprised. This was the first time he had seen Eisendale in person. It was said that Miss Eisendale's whereabouts were unpredictable. She was famous on the goddess list and warrior list, but no one could get close to her. However, it seemed that the relationship between the two of them was not as simple as ordinary friends. The sergeant was also very curious about Ding Meng. This person was young and didn't look very good. He looked like he had rolled around in the mud, but Miss Eisen seemed to think highly of him. With the urge to gossip, the sergeant quietly turned on the silent shooting function on his wristwatch and took a picture of Ding Meng. Although he couldn't directly scan it due to the law enforcement process, he would be able to find out who this person was after comparing it with the database. The Thousand Eyes spaceship quickly tightened its landing gear, started its engine, and slowly lifted off. The cockpit of the spaceship was very small. The 5 soldiers returned to their posts and began to work. Eisendale wandered around the main control panel. In fact, this was the sergeant's preferential treatment for her. After all, the Rainbow family was very famous in the Federation, and Miss Eisendale's status was also very prominent. If it were someone else, they would definitely be sent to the lounge. It was impossible for her to stay in the cockpit. The sergeant entered the information collected by the scanner into the screen and then uploaded it to the military's intranet system. Then he entered Ding Meng's picture, and the database quickly gave him detailed information about Ding Meng in the Federation. The public information about Ding Meng in the Federation's administration was very limited. It only showed that he had graduated from Starlight University and was blank after that. However, some people could still see the clues. The sergeant was a little surprised. "Miss Eisendale, is this Mr. Ting your friend?" Isendale glanced at the screen. Yes, he is indeed my friend. The sergeant's tone was full of envy. Mr. Ting is very young. He graduated first in Starlight University at the age of 21. This meant that Ding Meng was already a combat master level origin ability user at the age of 21. Now that 11 years had passed, such a talented person would most likely be a warlord level or even a warlord level expert. No wonder Miss Eisen took a liking to him as a friend. It was really a case of dragons meeting dragons and phoenixes meeting phoenixes. A friend made by a mouse could only crawl into a hole. Of course, if he knew Ding Meng's true level now, he would probably be scared to death. At this time, countless rays automatically fell from the ceiling of the cockpit. The remote real-time transmission next to the main control panel was combining images. The sergeant and his 4 subordinates immediately stood up and straightened their backs. It seemed that the images of the high-ranking members of the patrol fleet had been transmitted. Sure enough, the person who was transmitted was an officer in a neat uniform. He didn't look young. His rank was Major, which was usually the commander of the fleet. The sergeant and the others immediately saluted. Sir, the Major nodded slowly. Sergeant Zhang Jun, thank you for your hard work. The fleet has received the information you sent back. According to Commander Liu Ting's instructions, a demon general has appeared on Thousand Sails Planet. We will send an advance team to clean up and investigate thoroughly. Your mission has been completed. Return immediately. The sergeant saluted again. Roger. The Major then turned his gaze to Isendale. Miss Isendale, hello. This is the Holy Grail Federation's patrol, fleet number GT003NT08688K in the northern horizon. I'm Mu Chun, the adjutant of the fleet. According to Commander Liu Ting's instructions, we will send the Skywalker starship to welcome you back. Please don't worry. The meaning of these words was obvious. The patrol fleet had received the information from Zhang Jun and immediately notified the Rainbow family. The Rainbow family must have contacted the military and must send their young lady back safely. Isendale nodded. Thank you, Commander Mu. You're welcome. Muchin replied neither humbly nor arrogantly. I wish you a pleasant return. Goodbye. Isendale thought this was just a small interlude, but 10 minutes later, a remote instant message came in from the cockpit. Seeing the colorful light on the screen, Zhang Jun and the others' expressions changed. They stood up again with their heads held high. It was obvious that the person who had come this time was of higher rank. After the mirror image was formed, a young and handsome officer appeared beside the control panel. Although he was young, the insignia on his chest showed that he was a major general. A small reconnaissance ship had actually alarmed a major general. This was simply a big deal. Zhang Jun and the others saluted respectfully. Sir. However, the major general ignored them and looked directly at Isendale. Miss Isendale, how have you been? Is everything okay? Isendale could not help but ask in surprise. How did you know I was here? This was none other than Haodong, a military big shot among the many pursuers of the transit string. Haodong smiled happily. It's simple. The patrol fleets with the serial number GT are all under my command. This is a military secret, but you're not an outsider, so it's okay if you know. Looking at Haodong's happy smile, Isendale had a bad feeling. She knew this person. His background aside, everyone in the Federation knew that Haodong was a loyal pursuer of the transit string. Miss Isendale, the whole world is looking for you now. I didn't expect you to go to the Zeta 2-star system. Your grandpa was very angry when he found out that you went to the Fertile Chalk system. Then you mysteriously disappeared from there. The pressure from your family is on the military. Fortunately, you're safe. Haodong explained casually. Isendale said calmly, Of course I'm fine. Haodong stared at her for a while and finally asked, Where's Ding Meng? Isendale said, I don't know. Haodong looked at her with a faint smile. That's not a smart lie. Isendale was puzzled. You know Ding Meng? Haodong sighed. I didn't know him at first, but now it's hard not to know him. This kid caused such a big incident in the Fertile Chalk system. Do you know how many people are looking for him now? There are more people looking for him than for you. Isendale said coldly. He doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, does he? Haodong said, He does have nothing to do with me, but I was asked by someone to look for information. Eisendale said, "Unfortunately, you asked the wrong person." Haodong smiled. "You seem to be worried about him." Eisendale sneered. "Am I?" Haodong waved his hand. "Forget it. I'll just look for you. Someone wants to talk to you." The transit line changed again, and the human figure immediately changed into another person. This person was wearing a uniform, was tall, and had a bright appearance. Eisendale was shocked again. Xing Xian. The transit string always had a bright smile on his face. "Dai, long time no see. How have you been?" Eisendale finally knew that things were not good. The transit string was connected to her, which meant that the Starry Rainbow Group had found out about Ding Meng's general whereabouts. No wonder Ding Meng had refused to come on board. He must have expected this. She had to admit that Ding Meng was cautious and thoughtful. However, Eisendale also felt a wave of regret. If she had not insisted on returning to the Federation, the information that Ding Meng was on Thousand Sail Star would not have been exposed. In the end, she had unintentionally sold out Ding Meng. "I'm not good," Eisendale said unhappily. The transit string was a little surprised. "Oh," Eisendale pondered and said, "Chi-Chi must be looking for Ding Meng all over the world right now, right?" The transit string gave a strange smile. "What does that have to do with me? Do you really think I would tell my sister about Ding Meng? You think too much." This time, it was Eisendale's turn to be stunned. She had interacted with the three Ling sisters quite a bit. She knew that the transit string was definitely not the kind of person who liked to lie and pretend to be strange. If she said so, then she must have done so. The transit string explained, "After you went missing in the fertile chalk system, Uncle was very worried and asked everyone to help him find out. I just received a call from Haodong, so I came to confirm that you're okay. Of course, my sister is indeed looking for Ding Meng, but I'm not so free as to tell her about Ding Meng. This is not important to her." Eisendale could not help but sneer. "Then what is the most important news to her?" The transit string stopped smiling and said meaningfully, "The exact location of Ding Meng is the most important news to other people." As soon as this was said, Eisendale immediately smelled a strong conspiracy. Chapter 720. "Who are they?" Eisendale asked. The transit string said, "You don't have to worry about that." Eisendale said, "Zing string, are you deliberately planning to deal with Ding Meng?" The transit string smiled again. Dai, let me put it this way. I have never thought of dealing with Ding Meng. My attitude is clear enough, right? Ding Meng killed so many battle saints of the Starry Rainbow Corporation. Elder Wu was killed by him. I saw it with my own eyes. I don't believe that you will do nothing about it," Eisendale said suspiciously. "I know." The transit string sighed slightly. "Uncle Wu and Third Aunt are very good to me. I also see them as family. However, I always feel that fighting and killing is not the right way to solve problems." Eisendale said, "Then what do you want?" The transit string said, "Nothing else. As a friend, I just want you to return safely. Now that a demon general has appeared on Thousand Sail Star, if my guess is correct, it will not be long before that place becomes a huge whirlpool. No matter who gets sucked in, it will be difficult to escape unscathed." Eisendale fell silent. She smelled a huge danger signal from the transit string's words. The third daughter of the Ling family was not the same as Ling Xingqi. She never acted according to common sense, but when she did, it was always earth-shattering. Eisendale believed that the transit string was not lying, but she definitely did not believe that the transit string would sit by and do nothing. The remote instant message quickly disappeared. The cockpit was strangely quiet. Zhang Zhen and the other four stood there numbly. Not only had so many important people suddenly come, but the content of the conversation between Eisendale and the transit string was enough to make them tremble in fear. It turned out that the young man with the surname Ding was an extremely powerful warrior who could kill several battle saints of the Starry Rainbow Group. He was a man standing at the top of the food chain. No wonder Miss Eisendale favored him. After a long time, Zhang Zhen said with difficulty, "Miss Eisendale." Eisendale's face suddenly darkened. "Go back." Zhang Zhen and the others were at a loss. "Go back. Where are you going?" Isendale's expression was ugly. Return to Thousand Sail Star now, immediately. Zhang Zhun forced a smile. Miss Eisen, please don't joke with us. I'm not kidding. Isendale's expression was unusually calm. I want you to turn around and go back the way you came. Zhang Zhun's face also became serious. I'm really sorry, Miss Eisen. I didn't receive orders from the commanding officer. I have no right to change the route. We can't bear the responsibility because this is a military order. Did I ask you to take responsibility? Isendale stared at him fiercely. Zhang Zhun had a difficult look on his face. Miss Eisen, you are born in a wealthy family and are magnanimous. Please don't make things difficult for us. Isendale took a deep breath and flashed back to her original position, leaving several afterimages in the cockpit. With a series of dull thuds, Zhang Zhun and the other four fell to the ground one after another. Isendale didn't go all out. These people were soldiers of the Federation military. They weren't afraid that she was the young lady of the Rainbow family. Killing soldiers for no reason was not a small crime. After knocking out the 5 people, Isendale immediately began to change the route on the control panel. At the same time, she turned off the military's internal communication channel. What she needed to do now was to return to Thousand Sail Star, pick up Ding Ming and the Guzi siblings, and escape quickly. She could basically confirm 2 things now. The first was that the military would definitely send a fleet to sweep Thousand Sail Star because there were already realm devourers here. The second was that a large number of masters from the Starbow group would definitely come as soon as possible, and their target was Ding Ming. Furthermore, with the good relationship between the Starbow group and the military, Haodong's subordinates would definitely participate. No matter how strong Ding Ming was, in the face of such a powerful force, he should understand what it means to be able to kill an elephant with a large number of ants. Bootlickers really don't deserve a good death. Isendale couldn't help but curse. At the same time, in the depths of the universe, a spectacular special-class patrol fleet was quietly floating in space. This fleet was extremely large, with more than 300 starships of various types. The leading mothership was the famous Golden Eagle-class patrol starship. At this moment, the command hall of the mothership was brightly lit. A group of important military personnel gathered around the control panel. Among them was a blonde beauty wearing a colonel's uniform. She stood in the crowd with an imposing aura. She was the commander-in-chief of the patrol fleet number GT-003-NT-08688K, Lu Ting. She looked young, but she was actually over 200 years old. She had participated in the Realm Devourer War 100 years ago. Because of her rich experience and strength, she was entrusted with the heavy responsibility of guarding the Northern Horizon star system and patrolling the Zyrtl star system. She was quite a powerful character. At this moment, a communications officer kept reporting the latest news. Sir, we just received a joint notice from the Federation's Department of Defense, Department of Police, and Department of Intelligence. The presence of a Realm Devourer on Thousand Sail Star is of great importance. The Congress wants us to investigate thoroughly and form a written report. Lu Ting slightly raised her eyebrows. The Department of Defense is fine, but what about the Department of Police and Department of Intelligence? According to the latest report from the Department of Police, a Class A felon of the Federation is hiding on Thousand Sail Star. His name is Ding Ming, and he was stranded on Thousand Sail Star with Miss Eisen. A Class A felon? Lu Ting frowned even harder. The Federation hasn't had a felon of this level for many years. What did he do? According to the Department of Intelligence, Ding Ming was involved with the forces in outer space and colluded with the military of the Norse Empire. He killed 17 battle saints of the Star Rainbow Group in the Wakeo star system. This action not only damaged the national defense of the Federation, but it is also a felony murder. The Congress has determined that he is a Class A felon. There was a strange silence in the command hall. The group of officers felt their scalps go numb. Killing 17 battle saints. What kind of terrifying concept was this? Looking at the entire Federation, the number of people who could do this probably didn't exceed 2 digits, right? Only those old fellows who had been in seclusion for many years and hadn't been in the public eye for a long time could do it. Muchen couldn't help but sigh. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Lu Ting sneered. It's just that the Star Rainbow Group suffered a loss and put pressure on the Federation government. They can't wait to rope in this kind of talent, but they just have to label him as a felon. Muchen explained, Sir, the Star Rainbow Group has always complied with the military's requests. This is reasonable. It's just an exchange of benefits. Lu Ting's expression was ugly. Does Officer Haodong have any instructions? The communications soldier carefully replied, Yes. Lu Ting's face darkened. Speak. The communications soldier said, Officer Haodong has ordered that because our unit is the closest to the Zirital star system, the fleet should be prepared to head to Thousand Sails Star to capture the culprit. Persuasion is the main goal, and force is the secondary goal. It would be best if the culprit could surrender on his own. Lu Ting's expression was cold. She didn't say anything for a long time, and the others didn't dare to say anything either. This big sister was famous for her violent temper. She had already restrained herself quite a bit by not acting up after receiving this order. However, everyone knew that the Star Rainbow Group had definitely come into conflict with Ding Ming. If they could come into conflict with a behemoth like the Star Rainbow Group, it could only be a conflict of interest. In the end, more than 10 battle saints had died. The Star Rainbow Group had no way to deal with them, so they had no choice but to rely on the Federation's higher-ups to put pressure on them. This pressure fell on the military, and that little bootlicker Haodong just so happened to be the spare tire of the transit string. As such, this order had been issued. This order was quite interesting. Persuasion is the main goal, meant that they knew that Ding Ming was an old origin energy monster and didn't dare to use force. They only dared to brag. Force is the secondary goal, was even more hilarious. Who on this fleet dared to say that they could exterminate a Battle Saint origin energy expert? Of course, the military also had origin energy experts, but they weren't used to capture criminals. Those who had performed meritorious deeds were used to protect the country. If they couldn't be asked to come out, they wouldn't be mobilized so easily. As for forcing the culprit to surrender on his own, everyone could only chuckle. Anyone who could do such a thing would definitely be a genius in the marketing world. As such, this order could only be carefully considered by the commander himself. Lu Ting muttered to herself for a moment before saying, Has the Star Rainbow Group made a move? Mu Chun understood and immediately replied, There hasn't been any movement from the Star Rainbow Group. Lu Ting was furious. They want to reap the fruits of their labor, but they aren't doing anything. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Are they trying to send us to our deaths and enjoy their arrival? Mu Chun helplessly said, There's also another piece of news. Ding Ming's identity is the security secretary of the president of the Sheng Hao Group's Blue Moon branch. The Sheng Hao Group has already raised a serious objection to this matter to the Federation's upper echelons. Currently, they have already received a notice from the Sheng Hao Group's Mr. Yu Tianlin. The Sheng Hao Group's Blue Moon branch has already sent a delegation to meet up with us. Lu Ting was shocked. There's such a thing? It seems like the Sheng Hao Group and the Star Rainbow Group have a major conflict. Mu Chun explained, This delegation is nominally led by the Sheng Hao Group's Yuan Jie, but in reality, I saw Yuan Shu's name on the list. Yuan Shu? Lu Ting was even more shocked. Are you sure it's at Yuan Shu? Mu Chun smiled bitterly. There are many people in the Holy Grail Federation with the same name, but there's only one person with this name who's from the Sheng Hao Group. Lu Ting seemed to suck in a breath of cold air. My goodness, these two families really don't care about the situation. What kind of trouble did this Ding Ming cause? As she spoke, she paced back and forth in the hall as if she was deep in thought. Don't you think this is very interesting? The Star Rainbow Group suffered a loss, but they didn't send anyone. Instead, the Sheng Hao Group sent someone, and it was a big guy. Mu Chun, go and investigate what kind of conflict did that Ding Ming have with the Star Rainbow Group in the Fertile Chalk Star system? Mu Chun spread his hands and said, I've already checked. I couldn't find anything at all. The database shows that it's classified as a high-level secret. We don't have enough authority. At this time, The communications officer began to speak again. Sir, the scouting ship carrying Miss Eisen suddenly lost contact with us. The ship automatically turned off the signal and cut off the communication channel. The scouting system captured that it's returning to Thousand Sails Star. Something really did happen. Lu Ting's face darkened. Pass down my order. Inform the Vanguard fleet that has already set off. After arriving at Thousand Sails Star, we'll split into two groups according to the information we have. One group will head to the site of the accident to search for clues about the Demon General and kill all monsters below the Demon General level. The other group will search for Miss Eisen's whereabouts and find out where Ding Meng is. Yes, ma'am. Sir. Chapter 721. It was still night, and Eisendale was running through the wilderness. She was extremely fast, covering a distance of dozens of meters with each step. She was like an eagle flying at low altitude. She had learned to be smart this time. She had parked the scout ship in the depths of the desert. Because the desert terrain of Thousand Sails Star was mostly inhabited by humans, and the swamps were occupied by world devourer monsters, both sides rarely ventured deep. For the same reason, the starships of the Federation could not fly to the rear of the swamp, as this would be seen as an invasion signal by the Devourer sector. After all, this was a military operation, and they had to have a firm foothold. Therefore, Eisendale abandoned the ship and flew for hundreds of kilometers, so that the pursuers behind her would not be able to find Ding Meng's specific coordinates. The river in front of the village soon appeared in sight. Ding Meng and Gu Zi were indeed together. Seeing Eisendale, Yitzi quickly ran up and smiled sweetly. Sister, you're back. How did you know I was coming back? Eisendale asked. Yitzi smiled and said, Big brother Ding Meng said that you will be back very soon. Eisendale then noticed that Gu Zi was putting a lot of food and sundries into his anti-gravity backpack. What are you doing? Ding Meng was wiping a javelin. Preparing to leave. Eisendale asked curiously, You change your mind? Preparing to leave? Ding Meng said lazily, If you think we're leaving this planet, you're wrong. We can't run away now. If I'm not wrong, the military's patrol fleet and Starbo's troops are coming here. Eisendale felt guilty. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. Ding Meng raised her head and stared at her. But you came back. You must have hijacked the reconnaissance ship. Eisendale also looked at him. Don't worry. I promise you'll be able to return to the Federation safe and sound. Ding Meng turned his head and shouted, Yitzi, come over and thank your sister. She came back because she was worried about you. Yitzi ran up happily and bowed respectfully. Thank you, sister. I know you won't leave us alone. Gu Zi picked up his backpack. We're all family. Sister will definitely take care of us. Looking at the two siblings, Eisendale felt warmth in her heart. Of course, it was more because of Ding Meng's understanding of her. Let's go. Ding Meng waved his hand. Where are we going now? Eisendale asked curiously. Ding Meng said, To a safe place, of course. Gu Zi volunteered and rushed forward. I know the place. I'll lead the way. The four of them quickly disappeared into the depths of the night. About 3 hours after they left, numerous dots of light appeared in the night sky. The Vanguard fleet had already entered the atmosphere of Thousand Sails Planet. This is a fleet led by 2 dragon-slaying warrior planet destroyers. The dense light spots are all drones of different colors and functions. Like a sky full of fireworks, they covered the desert of Thousand Sails Star. Their main purpose is to detect, scan, and analyze the situation. Of course, not only the planet destroyers could see the images, but also the mothership far away in the northern sky. Lu Ting and a group of officers were also observing the screens. The first thing they locked onto was the location where Eisendale had killed the Demon General. The drones had completely locked onto the location and were analyzing the debris on the ground. The data on the screen was constantly being refreshed. Mu Chan explained, according to the data analysis, there is indeed a Demon General there, but judging from the debris, the Demon General is completely dead. There are slight fluctuations of heat, ice, biochemistry, and mutation in the air. Lu Ting stared at the screen. As far as I know, Miss Eisendale isn't a thermodynamic origin ability user. In other words, the residual heat energy there must have been left behind by Ding Meng. From this, it could be inferred that Eisendale had indeed been with Ding Meng before, and the two might even have fought side by side. It seemed that Eisendale had suddenly hijacked the starship and returned to Thousand Sails Planet to find Ding Meng. Mu Chun murmured, "The eldest daughter of the Rainbow family is with a felon of the Federation. This isn't a good thing." Lu Ting glanced at him. "Don't be so nosy. Focus your energy on business." Mu Chun lowered his head and didn't dare to say more. Fortunately, a staff member in the reconnaissance area spoke up. "Officer Liu, Mr. Yuan Jie from the Shanghao Group's delegation has requested to open the teleportation coordinates. Please give us your instructions." Oh, Lu Ting was a little surprised. They came so quickly. Teleport the delegation's starship to the connecting port. Everyone, stay alert and prepare to welcome Shanghao's distinguished guests. Mu Chun was also quite surprised. It would take a starship a few months to fly from Saint Splendor to the northern sky at normal speed. It seemed that Shanghao's delegation had teleported here. Did this Ding Meng make Shanghao Group so anxious? Not long after, the alloy door of the command hall opened automatically. 2 rows of soldiers surrounded a group of people slowly walked in. Shanghao's delegation had a total of 6 people. Yuan Jie, who was wearing a suit and leather shoes, walked at the front. He looked very energetic. Beside him was the president of the Blue Moon branch, Lan Bing. Lan Bing was also wearing a woman's suit. She looked very capable and beautiful. Just the 2 of them alone attracted the attention of most of the staff present. One was a rich young master with a prominent status, while the other was a goddess on the list. It was truly a sight to behold. However, Lu Ting and Mu Chen's eyes fell on the group behind Yuan Jie. At the very back of the group, there was a stooped old man. He was really too old. Almost all of his hair had fallen out. He was wearing a very retro black tang suit. The material didn't look like much, and he limped as he walked. It seemed like he couldn't keep up with the young people in front of him. But in reality, Yuan Jie's steps were very slow, as if he was worried about the old man's pace. There were 2 men and 1 woman beside the old man. They looked very young, and they all stood respectfully by the old man's side. The staff present might not be able to see any clues, but Lu Ting and Mu Chen's eyes were as sharp as snow. Everything else aside, just by looking at the color around the old man's eyes, one could tell that the old man's strength was unfathomable. It was the kind of realm that made people look up to him. Yuan Jie quickly stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "Chief Commander Liu, the situation is urgent. This little one hastily requested to board the ship. It's really against the rules. I hope you can understand." He lowered his posture as soon as he came up, so Lu Ting naturally didn't care. Shanghao Group's influence was there. Yu Tianlin's young master had personally boarded the ship. Those military rules basically couldn't restrain him. Although Lu Ting's impression of Xinghong was very bad, she didn't have a good impression of Shanghao either. However, the proper etiquette couldn't be neglected. She smiled and replied, "Young Master Yu's words are too serious. Please take a seat in the rest area." Yuan Jie definitely wouldn't go to the rest area. He turned around and waited for the old man to come up. Although he was the young master of Shanghao, the real protagonist of this delegation wasn't him. The old man slowly walked over. Lu Ting immediately bowed her head respectfully. "Senior Yu, it's been many years. Are you well?" Old Yu looked at her with a smile. "Little Ting Ting, I haven't seen you for almost 100 years, right? The last time I saw you, you seemed to be a music star. I remember that you were still a young lady at that time. In the blink of an eye, you're the commander of the Northern Horizon." Lu Ting sweetly said, "It's all thanks to you. If it weren't for you fighting bravely on the front lines, where would we be today?" This old Yu is Yu Tianlin's uncle, Yuan Shu. When he was young, he joined the military and participated in the devouring World War. He had always been fighting on the front lines. His battle records were brilliant and his achievements were outstanding. 100 years ago, he was already a beginner-level battle saint. At the end of the war, Yuan Shu was seriously injured and poisoned, so he was sent back to the Federation. The military's original intention was to give him the honor of a soldier and then properly treat him. However, Sheng Hao Group insisted on taking this highly respected uncle back to recuperate. This recuperation lasted for a century, and he almost never walked in the public eye. The outside world said that Yuan Shu didn't want to be restricted by the military and wholeheartedly devoted himself to cultivation. After all, Sheng Hao Group was a big company. How could they not have any cultivation resources? Some people also said that Senior Yu missed his wife, so he wanted to spend more time with his family. But no matter what the theory was, one thing couldn't be denied. Yuan Shu was a highly respected person. He was a senior who truly served his country and shed his blood. More importantly, from a beginner-level battle saint 100 years ago until today, no one knew the depth of this old man's current strength. Yuan Jia lowered his head again. Chief Commander Liu, actually, we came here in a hurry to ask you to be merciful. People at their level basically exchanged information, so there was no need to beat around the bush. Lu Ting thought for a while and said, Commander Haodong did give us instructions in this regard. He asked us to arrest Ding Ming, but he didn't explicitly ask us to use force to arrest him. To be honest, with such a master in your group, ordinary people would find it hard to resist. If you really want to use force, no matter what the result is, it won't be a good thing for the Holy Grail Federation. Her view was relatively objective, but at the same time, she also expressed another meaning. Ding Ming represented Sheng Hao Group. If Sheng Hao Group and the military really fought, then there would be no winner. The Star Rainbow Group would be the one who would benefit. If the real master didn't come, then why should they start the war first? Yuan Shu nodded approvingly. That's right. The big picture is more important. A small secretary of a branch of my Sheng Hao Group has been labeled a federal felon for no reason without any concrete evidence. This is unfair. I came out this time because I was entrusted by Tian Lin. I must return justice to my Sheng Hao Group. Lu Ting felt strange. If you wanted to prove Ding Ming's innocence, you shouldn't have come to me. You should have gone to the Star Rainbow Group, the higher-ups of the Federation, the Ministry of National Defense, the Ministry of National Intelligence, or the Congress. There might be more to it. Lu Ting changed her words. Elder Yu, young Master Yu, Chief Lan, to be honest, our advanced fleet has arrived at Thousand Sail Star. Unfortunately, the reconnaissance system didn't find Ding Ming and Miss Eisen. Please take a look. Following her gesture, everyone looked at the screens on the main control console. They could clearly see the images of the desert on Thousand Sail Star. No matter if it was the towns, villages, mountains, or wilderness, they were all empty. Yuan Jia turned to look at Lan Bing. Did Ding Ming leave Thousand Sail Star? Chapter 722. Lan Bing nodded slowly. It's possible. Mu Chun immediately retorted. That's impossible. The airspace in the southern hemisphere of Thousand Sails Planet has been completely sealed off by our troops, unless he's heading north. Yuan Jia then looked at Lu Ting. Can we advance to the north? Lu Ting shook her head. No. Although our Federation and the Devouring World don't have a truce agreement, anyone who crosses Thousand Sails Planet will be seen as a sign of aggression. This is no longer a one-sided matter, but a military and political issue. What she meant was that the reconnaissance range of the Vanguard fleet could only scan the ground within the Gobi Desert. If they wanted to go deep into the swamp terrain, it would trigger a war between the two countries. Of course, with the strength of the Federation, they were not afraid of the Devouring World at all, but the consequences were not something Lu Ting could bear. Suddenly, someone in the reconnaissance area exclaimed, Sir, a large number of Devouring World units have been detected in the northern region of Thousand Sails Planet. The danger level is very high. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. They all turned their heads to look at the big screen in the center. In the depths of the dark space, thousands of 8-winged demonic dragons surrounded 4 blue void spirit rays. They were drifting in the direction of Thousand Sails Planet, covering the sky and the sun. The scene was extremely terrifying. Seeing this scene, everyone's scalp went numb, then their nerves tensed up. This was the rhythm of a great war. Lu Ting was very calm. Did the other side send us a communication link? The staff replied, There's no signal. Lu Ting decisively said, "Pass down my order. The Vanguard fleet will withdraw all the spacecraft. The main ship will take off and withdraw from Thousand Sails planet's atmosphere. Retreat 8,000 kilometers. Stay alert." Her judgment and response were undoubtedly the most correct. As soon as the two planet destroyers took off, the devouring world fleet immediately stopped flying and floated motionlessly in space. With Thousand Sails planet as the center, the two sides seemed to be in a standoff. With the combat power of the two planet destroyers, they were definitely not the opponents of the Void Spirit race. Of course, the devouring world units were not fools. They naturally understood that the two starships must be backed by a huge space fleet of the human race, so they didn't dare to fight easily. Lu Ting turned around and seemed to be deep in thought. "I participated in the Devouring Realm War 100 years ago, but unfortunately, I was not qualified to participate in the final pursuit. I heard that the immortal element king died around Thousand Sails star." This question was obviously directed at Yuan Shu. Yuan Shu nodded slowly. "There is such a thing, but it's not like what the Federation government is saying. King-class experts may not have truly fallen." "Oh." Lu Ting was surprised and hurriedly asked, "Elder Yu, I'd like to hear the details." Yuan Shu let out a long sigh. Although there are many types of troops in the devouring world, to be called a true expert, one must refine their immortal aperture, source soul, and heavenly strategy. The immortal aperture is the transformation, the source soul is the spirit refinement, and the heavenly strategy is the true formless art. This is a very unique aspect of the devouring world. Yuan Jie respectfully asked, "Granduncle, I've never understood what immortal aperture, source soul, and heavenly strategy are. What are they exactly?" Yuan Shu looked at him with a kind smile in his eyes. "These are all relatively abstract things that are not easy to describe, but you can understand them this way. These three are high-level techniques of the devouring world. They call themselves immortal techniques, and the immortal aperture is like the biochemical element of us origin ability users. Everyone knows that the monsters in the devouring world continuously evolve from low-level life forms. In the end, they cultivated immortal apertures and turned into human figures, which is to say, they cultivated to the extreme of the biochemical element. The Yuan soul can be understood as its spiritual body. Their spiritual body is far more powerful than that of a human's. The reason for this is because they constantly parasitize, devour, and evolve. Therefore, they have the characteristics of a high-level spiritual body. In the long time of the universe, the Yuan soul can exist for a very long time. It is very difficult to truly destroy them. Every void spirit ray has its own Yuan soul. Yuan Jie said, "What about the heavenly strategy?" A bitter smile appeared on Yuan Shu's face. "To be honest, even to this day, I still haven't figured out what the heavenly strategy is. As the name suggests, it is the decision of the heavens, the chosen one, and the chosen one is called the heavenly strategy. This is the explanation given by the devouring world. What is certain is that those who cultivate the heavenly strategy are king-level experts. Since the birth of the devouring world, there have been 5 kings, and each of them was a supreme existence. The last king, Xian Yuan, was the one who started the war in the devouring world 100 years ago. Although our Holy Grail Federation won the war in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. We paid a heavy price. Everyone knew this. The Federation had sacrificed too many people in the beginning of the war. In the end, the devouring world's army was forced to retreat. The Zero Star Field was the last place they pursued, and Thousand Sail Star Field was the most important place in the final battle. A complicated expression appeared on Yuan Shu's face. This heavenly strategy is actually formless and omnipresent. When we chased to Thousand Sail Star back then, Xian Yuan was also heavily injured. But in order to protect the remaining forces of the devouring world, she fought against 5 motherships alone. She was hit by 5 cluster shells from the mothership's main cannons. Yuan Jie was a little confused. As the king of the devouring world, she didn't retreat first but protected the army. This is a little interesting. Yuan Shu said, the devouring world is completely different from the monster world we normally know. Although Xian Yuan is the king, which king didn't evolve from a low-level monster? The low-level monsters and poison in the devouring world are their roots. It's like a tree. The most important parts of the tree are its roots and leaves. Without these two things, the trunk will wither sooner or later. If the army is completely wiped out by the Federation's fleet, what's the point of her, a queen, escaping? So don't think that the devouring world and the Frogman Kingdom are the same race. The more powerful a person is, the more they understand the importance of the bottom. Yuan Jie lowered his head respectfully. Thank you for your advice. Yuan Shu continued. After Xian Yuan was heavily injured, she was surrounded by many experts. Back then, she was indeed killed by the interstellar photon cannons of the motherships, but we all agreed that her soul wasn't truly destroyed. After all, the world of origin ability users back then wasn't as flourishing as it is today. There wasn't an extremely powerful force that could truly kill her. She was only temporarily dead, waiting for the right time to revive. Lu Ting added, the appearance of a demonic general on Thousand Sails Planet is a warning signal in itself. Now that so many void spirit rays have come, I'm afraid it's related to this queen. Her analysis was undoubtedly close to the truth. As soon as the planet destroyer took off, the void spirit rays on the other side immediately stopped flying. It wasn't that they didn't dare to fight, but they were worried that the power of the humans would trigger something. There was definitely some secret hidden on Thousand Sails Planet that couldn't be exposed. Could it be that Ding Meng knew? Lu Ting couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Yuan Shu finally said something shocking. 100 years ago, the devouring world retreated from Cypress Planet to Xeridol. Thousand Sails Planet was their last base. At that time, a large number of troops were stored here. The demonic pools and sacred lakes of the devouring world were all here. Xian Yuan protected the army as they retreated, but the demonic pools and sacred lakes might not have been able to be moved away in time. Lu Ting was shocked. Are you saying that the products of the Poison Cloud Demonic Sea are still on Thousand Sails Planet? Yuan Shu shook his head and said, that's not what I mean. The demonic pools and sacred lakes were destroyed by the Federation's fleet. Even if the remnants survived until today, they wouldn't be able to display their original power. However, everyone should know about the strange poison of the devouring world. Since it has polluted the earth, it won't be completely removed for a long time. The half-human, half-monster habitable terrain of Thousand Sails Planet is proof of this problem. Lu Ting's face sank. But if someone is operating it, then it's different. Yuan Jie also reacted. The things left behind by the devouring world's army have been buried underground for 100 years. If someone is operating it now, then those monsters might appear again. The appearance of a demonic general is enough to explain the problem. Not bad. Lu Ting nodded approvingly. Young Master Yu's analysis is very correct. Yuan Jie smiled modestly. Commander Lu, you flatter me. His attitude was very humble, but the pride in his eyes couldn't be hidden. In fact, he didn't know that Lu Ting was flattering him on the surface, but her thoughts were completely different. Lu Ting could now basically confirm one thing. Yuan Shu's past of the devouring world was all a pretense to draw everyone's attention to the devouring world. His real goal was definitely Ding Meng. This Ding Meng had secrets that couldn't be revealed. This was the core point, and Yuan Shu was definitely targeting this. The reason was simple. If it was really, as Yuan Shu described, and the remnants of the immortal Element King were secretly causing trouble here, would the Federation tolerate them for 100 years? Other things aside, with the current president's style of doing things, the monsters on Thousand Sails Planet had no choice. They would have been turned to ashes long ago. Sure enough, Yuan Shu finally spoke. There's an army of devouring world on the other side now. The patrol fleet won't be easily dispatched. It's time to send a single soldier down to take a look. The few young people beside him hadn't said anything. At this moment, a man finally spoke. Master, I'm willing to go alone. Yuan Shu nodded. Very good. You usually train in a peaceful environment. True strength can only be tested in life and death situations. Lu Ting said without batting an eyelid, Elder Yu, this matter concerns the invasion of the devouring world. We don't dare to be careless. The people in our fleet will also go with you to protect your disciples, right? Mu Chen understood and stood up decisively. Sir, I'm willing to go to Thousand Sails Planet. Yu Wenshu was calm and expressionless. We've already troubled you to board the ship, Little Ting. I'm too embarrassed to ask you to escort them. It's better to let the young people go on their own. Little Jia, as a member of Shenghao, you should also go down personally. Yu Anjia immediately straightened his chest. That's how it should be. Lan Bing didn't say anything, but she was laughing coldly in her heart. She didn't know what the people in the military were thinking, but she knew the Yu family's thoughts all too well. The Yu family would never let Ding Meng's Shunguang biotechnology energy pass through the hands of outsiders. Not even her. Chapter 723. Deep in a forest, Ding Meng's group of 4 was quietly moving through the swamp. The night was still misty, and it was raining again. Guzi shuttled through all kinds of strange plants. Although he and Yitzi were ordinary humans, they had lived on Thousand Sail Star since they were young, so they were very familiar with the terrain. They knew very well where they couldn't go, what they couldn't touch, and what they couldn't eat. Eisenel wasn't impatient about this. Now that she and Ding Meng had completely controlled and concealed their auras, they shuttled through the polluted areas of the Devourer world on foot. It would be very difficult for the starships in the sky to detect their whereabouts. The 4 of them walked to the bottom of a cliff. Guzi used a javelin to push aside a few thick purple-blue leaves and pointed at a pile of rocks at the bottom of the cliff. It's here, Ding Meng. Ding Meng nodded. I remember. Back then, Uncle and the village chief mentioned that this place is a forbidden zone. Eisenel was curious. Forbidden zone? Guzi explained. Yes, Grandpa once said that there are ghosts and gods here, and that we shouldn't come here unless necessary. For an origin ability user like Eisendel, the so-called ghosts and gods were rather ignorant. After all, this was the backward Thousand Sails Star. The natives didn't have much knowledge and didn't know anything about spirits. Therefore, they thought that spirits were something like gods and ghosts. What's so special about this place? Eisendel asked. Yitzi explained. There are gods here. Unless there's a disaster, you can't go in. Monsters are the same. None of them are allowed to enter. Eisendel thought to herself that it was no wonder they hadn't seen any devourer monsters along the way. Ding Meng had already started digging. This pile of rubble was obviously man-made. Once it was cleared, a gloomy cave entrance was revealed. After entering, they found that it was a natural cave. The cave wasn't very big, but it naturally extended underground. After sensing it slightly, they didn't find anything unusual. However, as they walked down, they felt as if they had returned to the interior of the large energy crystal fortification. They kept circling and slowly heading down. Not only was the terrain of the cave very complicated, but it also seemed to have no end. It was simply frighteningly deep. But the strange thing was that this bottomless pit did not have any traces of artificial excavation. At the same time, the passage and the 4 walls were very dry. Of course, there was one thing that was certain. It was indeed very safe to hide here. At the very least, the radar in the sky could not penetrate it. How do you know there's such a place? Eisenale was very curious. Ding Meng explained. In the War of the Devourers 100 years ago, the Devourers were forced to Thousand Sail Star by the Federation's fleet. They had nowhere else to go, and they had no choice but to leave behind a large number of strategic resources and poisons. Eisendale asked, buried under here. Ding Meng said, it's been 100 years. I'm not sure if these things are still there, but this terrain is the best cover. Eisendale nodded. There were countless natural caves like this on Thousand Sail Star. The Federation's fleet could not search them one by one. As long as the pollution was not too great, the army would usually ignore it. This was also the army's way of dealing with the Devourers. Then how long do we have to hide? Eisendale asked again. Until it's safe. Ding Meng sighed. I'm fine with it. I'm just worried that you'll be bored. Isendale understood what he meant. Ding Ming did not care about the revenge of the Starbow group, but he was worried that the Guzi siblings would be implicated. However, Guzi and Yeetsi had been hunting in the dark for many years, and they had also trained their night vision. Even in this pitch-black darkness, everyone could still see clearly, so there was no need to use flashlights or other sources of light. Yeetsi suddenly looked up and said, "Brother Ding Ming, we've walked so deep. Why haven't we seen any gods yet?" Guzi said, "It's a good thing that we haven't seen any. Grandpa used to say that gods sometimes help people, and sometimes they hurt people. They're erratic, and only those who are fated can come in contact with them. Let's go with brother and sister Ding Ming. There's so much to eat anyway, so we don't have to worry about being hungry." Oh, Yeetsi looked a little disappointed. The four of them continued to descend. After walking for an unknown period of time, a spacious cave appeared before their eyes. This cave was relatively flat. It was like a circular hall with an area of more than 3,000 square meters. In the center of the hall, there were 16 pillars. The pillars formed a circle, and the ground formed a circular platform. There were steps on the platform, and it looked more like an altar. Isendale hesitated and said, "Is this something from the Devourer's world?" Ding Ming nodded. This place was very similar to the energy pool inside the Void Spirit Ray, but there were obvious differences. This was because the altar was completely dry. It should be known that most of the things in the Devourer's world were poisonous fog. There were very few dry and clean environments. "Let's rest here." Ding Ming sat down in the open space on the altar. He wasn't tired, but Guzi and Yeetsi couldn't move for a long time. They had to eat to recover their strength. The relationship between the two siblings was undoubtedly very good. After the two ate some jerky and drank a bottle of nutrient solution, Guzi directly lay down on the ground and fell asleep, while Iko pillowed her head on Guzi's thigh and fell into a deep sleep. In her dreams, there seemed to be a faint smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. Looking at Yeetsi's expression, Isendale revealed an envious look. Ding Ming said, "Are you envious that they can sleep? Us origin ability users don't need a rest." Isendale shook her head and sighed. Guzi is very good to Yeetsi. He lets his sister choose first and even lets her sleep. It's really enviable to have such a brother. Ding Ming looked at her. "Don't you have any brothers?" "I do." Isendale shook her head. "But they're different from Guzi. My brothers never care about their family. They only care about their own power and interests." This was a common problem in large families. It was enough to show that although Isendale's status in the Rainbow family was extraordinary, she didn't have a happy life. Thus, she often went out to train and explore. "I'll rest for a while too." Ding Ming had never been interested in these topics, so he simply sat down with his back against a pillar and closed his eyes. This was his unique cultivation method. Isendale was obviously good at it too. She also sat cross-legged beside Ding Ming and closed her eyes, entering her own space of consciousness. Ever since she had become one with Ding Ming, she had gradually mastered the refinement of Shunguang Technology's energy. Absorbing this energy wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. Especially on that crazy night, the two of them had done it many times. Ding Ming had injected a huge amount of Shunguang energy into her. Fortunately, she had also practiced a high-level smelting technique. If it had been someone else, their body would have exploded and they would have died. However, just as the two of them were cultivating alone, Guzi and Yeetsi, who were in the middle of the open space, suddenly woke up. The siblings shot up as if they had been shot by an arrow. Ding Ming slowly opened his eyes. "What's wrong?" Isendale was also startled. She found that the siblings' foreheads were full of sweat. "Sister, I'm a little scared." Yeetsi's expression was very frightened. "Don't be scared. What's wrong?" Isendale got up and stroked her head. Yeetsi said timidly, "I just had a nightmare." Guzi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "That's weird. I just had a nightmare too." Ding Ming frowned. "What nightmare?" Guzi looked confused. "In my dream, I found that we were still here. I could even see that we were sleeping." "Ding Ming, you and my sister were meditating." Ding Ming said. Are you too tired? Yeetzy suddenly said, huh? Goozy, why is your dream the same as mine? Goozy was startled. Did you see something? Yeetzy suddenly pointed to a hole in the west wall. I just saw that there was someone there, and they were calling my name. That voice sounded like Grandpa's voice. Once she said that, Goozy suddenly looked shocked. I saw it too, but I think I heard Grandma's voice. Ding Ming and Isendale looked at each other. They had already sensed that something was wrong. It was reasonable to say that dreams were normal, but how could two people have the same dream? Ding Ming secretly spread his telekinesis, and the force field immediately spread to the inside of the tunnel in all directions. Unfortunately, there was no abnormality in his telekinesis vision. If there was really someone doing this, then this person was too scary. Even telekinesis vision could not detect him. What kind of magic was this? What else did you see? Isendale asked again. Yizo revealed a panicked expression. I just walked down that way and suddenly saw a ghost face. I was scared awake. Ding Ming looked at Goozy. Were you like that too? Goozy nodded in horror. Exactly the same. I've never seen such a scary face, so I woke up too. When I woke up, I realized that it was a dream. I'm afraid you weren't dreaming. Ding Ming swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He was afraid of scaring the siblings. Although Goozy and Easy had seen many hideous world-devouring monsters in the polluted area, they were still ordinary humans after all. Their psychological endurance was limited. However, to be able to scare them, it was enough to show how terrifying the ghost face was. Ding Ming and Isendale could not help but exchange a look, which meant that something was wrong. They were awake just now, and there was no abnormality in their perception, but the siblings had the same dream. To put it simply, a dream was a kind of nerve impulse signal generated by the brain. It was also a kind of brainwave. The siblings had the same dream, which meant that their brainwaves were being guided or manipulated by someone. Ding Ming and Isendale were both high-level origin ability users. Their brains were stable and their minds were stronger than ordinary people's, so it was normal that they could not sense it. Isendale said, "Why don't we take a break too?" Ding Ming understood what she meant. They should stop using their origin ability, withdraw their telekinesis, and enter the dream to see if they can have the same dream. Okay, Ding Ming answered, but I need to borrow your leg. Isendale said. Ding Ming was stunned. What? Isendale glanced at him. I also want to try sleeping on your leg. It's much more comfortable than lying on the stone floor. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Okay. Chapter 724. After eating and drinking for a while, the four of them fell asleep in the open space one after another. In fact, Ding Ming and Isendale fell asleep much faster than the Goozy siblings. Because of their cultivation, they could directly control their sleep, but Goozy and Isendale could only fall asleep when they were tired. After stopping his origin energy and restraining his aura, Ding Ming suddenly realized that the scene in the dream was really the same as before. There seemed to be a burst of cold air blowing out from the cave entrance on the west wall, making him shudder. No, this was not a dream. Ding Ming turned his head and found that his real body was lying on the ground, and Isendale's head was resting on his thigh, sleeping. To be precise, this was telekinesis vision, but he clearly did not use any power. It was more like a strand of his consciousness had drifted out. Suddenly, a very low voice came from the darkness. Door! Spirit! So, the voice seemed to come from inside the cave, but he did not know what it meant. Ding Ming simply walked into the tunnel. Suddenly, his vision blurred. It was as if a large amount of white light flashed in front of him. This feeling was like watching a black and white TV. On the screen, white pieces of paper and black shadows intertwined and flickered. They kept combining and disintegrating, creating a strange feeling in one's vision. At the end of the passage was a circular cave. At this time, a pale human face suddenly appeared on the flat stone floor. Even though Ding Ming's mental fortitude was strong, he could not help but be startled. It was indeed a human face, but it was a fragmented face, as if it had been cut into dozens of pieces and placed on the ground. It was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. but the outline of the face and the eyes could be vaguely seen. This face was like the face of a dead person from the underworld. Ding Ming gathered his courage and squatted down, carefully observing the face. He was an expert above the warlord level, so he naturally had a strong mind. Thus, he was not afraid of staring at the ghost face for a long time. However, the Goozy siblings would definitely wake up in fright when they saw it. At this time, the ghost face's eyes seemed to move, and the face seemed to be staring at him. Then, the ghost face's eyes turned, and its gaze seemed to be looking at him in the distance. Ding Ming was lost in thought. Was the ghost face pointing to the central altar? Just as he thought that, the ghost face disappeared. The ground suddenly split open, and a huge stream of water gushed out. This stream of water was also very strange. It condensed in the air and did not dissipate. Then, it was absorbed by the 16 pillars. Then, a spectacular scene appeared. The empty space of the altar quickly produced a mirror image of the 8 trigrams. This was the energy pool inside the void spirit ray. The mirror image wildly rotated and a strong light filled the cave. There was a vague human face in the 8 trigrams that was surrounded by light, as if it was taking form. It seemed like the source spirit of an important person in the devouring world had been activated. At this moment, his vision blurred again. Ding Ming suddenly opened his eyes, and everything returned to normal. Eisenale also woke up. I saw a ghost face. The Goozy siblings looked at each other. They had been scared awake, but Ding Ming and his sister had naturally woken up. Ding Ming said in a low voice, "Was this place activated?" When he asked this question, Eisenale knew that she had the same dream as him. She could not help but stare at the ground in a daze. What the hell is this place? Ding Ming wanted to answer that they were probably inside a void spirit ray, but he had too many questions in his mind at the moment and was not completely sure. One thing is for sure. This is definitely the territory of the devouring world. Ding Ming analyzed. Eisenale nodded in agreement. But this place is empty. There is nothing here. Ding Ming said, "This place is so dry because it has been sealed for many years. There are no toxins or swamps. In other words, this place should be left over from the war 100 years ago." Eisenale said, "Okay, even if that is the case, how do you explain this dream? Everyone has the same dream as soon as they fall asleep. Who is controlling everyone's brainwaves?" Ding Ming pondered and said, "I don't think it's controlled by someone. If someone can really control my brainwaves, then that person is too scary. If he or she is so powerful, why doesn't he or she just do it?" Eisenale was stunned. Ding Ming sighed. There are actually many strange formations in the devouring world. Formations? Eisenale expressed that she did not understand this concept. Ding Ming said, "In fact, it's the same as the various force fields that we origin ability users create. Let me give you an example. Illusionary telekinesis can create many illusions. As long as you are within the range of the opponent's force field, you will be confused. What you see and hear is different from the real world." Eisenale said, "You mean that someone has set up a formation here, and only those who enter can see what happened just now?" Ding Ming pondered and said, "I always feel that this should be a protective mechanism." Eisenale said, "Why do you say that?" Ding Ming said, "It can only be activated when someone is asleep. It let you see the ghost face and the energy pool just now." Eisenale seemed to understand something. The origin power of origin ability users usually operate spontaneously, so origin ability users don't need to sleep and can't see the dream. It's very difficult for ordinary people to come here, so they can't see it either. This is to ensure that this place is not easily known to outsiders. Ding Ming smiled. These are all speculations. There's no evidence. Why don't we go to the cave and see what's going on? The cave he was referring to was where the ghost face was, but after the 4 of them ran over, there was no trace of it on the stone floor, let alone the ghost face. The dream just now was really a dream, as if nothing had happened. However, Ding Ming and Eisenale were not stupid enough to think that it was a simple dream. There must be something wrong with it. Yeetzy said timidly, "Brother Ding Ming, could this be a hint?" Grandpa used to say that before a god manifests, there would be all kinds of hints. Ding Meng suddenly realized that Yixi's words made more sense. The water spurting out of the ground was a hint. It wanted to activate the energy pool and restore its origin soul. Could it be that some big shot from the devouring world was hiding here? Ding Meng spread out his telekinesis vision again. This time, he used the green spirit tree as the center. He used his telekinesis to scan the area as wide as possible. Unfortunately, it was the same as when they first entered. There were no abnormalities, no energy fluctuations, and no end in sight. Also, judging from the terrain, this place did not look like the interior of the Void Spirit Ray at all. This is really strange. Ding Meng sighed. Even if you want to activate the energy pool, you have to inject energy. But where is the energy? This place is so dry that I can't even find the water in the dream, let alone energy. Brother Ding Meng, if you want to find a water source, I have a way. Guzi suddenly said. Oh. Ding Meng turned his head in surprise. What's the way? Guzi immediately took out a small green flower from his bag. The flower looked like a mint. What is this? Isendale was curious. Guzi explained, this is a very rare plant that grows in polluted areas. It's called the spirit-searching flower. The more humid a place is, or the closer it is to a water source, it will give you a hint. During the drought years, Mom and Dad used this to find a water source. This was clearly a product of the devouring world. Ding Meng and Isendale did not understand it. But now, the flower was in Yixi's hand. Yixi led everyone to a cave in the south. This time, they went down in a roundabout way, but the distance was very far. Ding Meng could not calculate how far it was. Anyway, Guzi and Isendale had stopped to rest 7 times. Ding Meng estimated that they had gone at least 10 to 20,000 meters underground, because this distance was beyond the detection range of telekinesis. This time, the 4 of them entered a space that resembled a palace. It was a large, squarish cave. The 16 pillars in the center did not surround an altar, but a pool. Strictly speaking, it was more like a small lake. We found water. Yixi cheered. Guzi also looked excited. It's underground water. Wait. Ding Meng decisively stopped the brother and sister. Don't touch anything from the devouring world. Isendale walked to the pool and scooped up some water. There's no problem. It's a normal underground water source. But this pool is very deep. I can't see the end. Hearing this, Yixi put her hand into the pool. However, the spirit-exploring flower in her hand floated on the surface of the water and turned into a ball of flame. The flame was white in the air. Ez and the other 2 were so shocked that they retreated a few steps. Ding Meng walked up and asked what happened. Guzi looked terrified. The spirit-exploring flower has never done this before. Ding Meng said, I knew this underground water source was not so simple. It's clearly a strange poison from the devouring world. The white flame quickly burned out in the air, forming a black mist. However, Ding Meng was not very worried. With him nearby, even if Guzi and Isendale were poisoned, he could cure them in an instant. I'll go down and take a look. Wait for me here. Ding Meng stood at the edge of the pool. Isendale said, I'll go too. Ding Meng waved his hand decisively. You should stay. If anything happens, Guzi and Isendale won't be safe. Isendale thought about it and felt that it made sense. If she could find her way here, it didn't mean that the people from the Starbow Corporation couldn't find them. If the masters from the Starbow Corporation came, they might not be able to deal with them, but she was confident that she could protect the Guzi siblings. As Ding Meng jumped into the pool with a plop, Isendale sat down beside the pool and began to cultivate. Yixi was confused. What is Brother Ding Meng looking for? Guzi obviously did not know what Ding Meng was doing. Maybe he's looking for a god. After all, the Federation has enemies who want to deal with Brother Ding Meng. Yixi said, will the god help Brother Ding Meng? Guzi said, I think so. Yixi said, why? Guzi scratched his head. I don't know. Anyway, I feel that Brother Ding Meng's luck is not too bad. Chapter 725. Guzi and Yixi were obviously the kind of people who could endure loneliness. After eating, drinking, and sleeping for a while, they picked up the javelin and began to practice martial arts. Survival and hunting were essential skills on Thousand Sail Star, so they usually practiced with each other when they had nothing to do. After an unknown period of time, Isendale suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was unusually sharp in the dark. "Sister, what's wrong?" Yeetsi obviously sensed it. "Nothing, don't worry," Isendale said, but her face was quite pale. Not long after, even Goozy and Yeetsi heard a buzzing sound coming from the North Passage. There was not even a shadow in the underground ruins, so where did the sound come from? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Two fist-sized metal objects flew out of the passage and emitted red lasers in all directions, illuminating all corners. These were none other than the single-soldier instruments used to detect complicated terrains, curved light detection dogs. In fact, this was easy to understand. The radars on starships could not scan the underground world, but the cruising fleet in outer space could locate the ground's coordinates and send down a single soldier. Then, they could use the curved light detection dogs to sweep the underground cave clean. Isendale stood up slowly. She knew that someone would come here soon. Instead of wasting energy to escape, it was better to wait and see. Yeetsi, don't run around. Just stay by my side. If there is an enemy attack, you must keep a distance from me, Isendale said. Soon, footsteps sounded in the passage. It was a stiff metallic sound. Isendale was experienced and knew that it was the sound of boots stepping on the stone floor. It seemed that the military had found them first. As expected, Mu-chun led two soldiers with detection equipment in their hands as they quickly walked in. Mu-chun's expression was gratified. "Thank goodness, Ms. Isendale, you're indeed down here." Seeing the military rank on his shoulder, Isendale asked coldly, "Are you Haodong's subordinate?" Mu-chun was polite to her. "Ms. Isendale, please come back to the surface with us. The teleportation system is ready. Your family misses you very much." Isendale didn't answer. After all, Mu-chun's intentions were unclear. She couldn't tell if he was here on behalf of Haodong. Mu-chun seemed to know what she was worried about. "Miss Eisen, Ding Meng is now a class of criminal in the Federation. The police department and the Ministry of National Defense will deal with him. If there is nothing else, I hope you can return to the surface with me as soon as possible and return to the Holy Grail Federation. Everything here has nothing to do with you." He had tried his best to be as straightforward as possible. Ding Meng had nothing to do with them. What the military cared about was his safety. In fact, this was also Lu Ting's intention. "I don't care what grudges Xing Hong has with Ding Meng, but I won't meddle in your affairs, right? As long as I can bring Miss Eisen back safely and block the Devouring World Army outside, my mission is basically complete. As for whether you want to fight or kill, did he want to die? What does that have to do with me?" Isendale pondered and said, "It's not impossible for me to go back, but I want to take the two of them with me." She was referring to Goozy and Yeetsi, but it was very difficult to take the siblings away. The Federation would not accept interstellar refugees. Unexpectedly, Mu-chun agreed without hesitation. "No problem. We can put them on a fleet and then find the Federation Affairs Bureau to figure out a way." Isendale was about to step forward when a cold voice suddenly sounded from above the palace. "Is this a place where you can come and go as you please?" Mu-chun and the others were shocked. The voice was deep and powerful. It was definitely not an ordinary person. Isendale turned her gaze to the hole in the southeast corner. The person had not arrived, but the voice had already reached them. The powerful aura indicated that the person was a battle saint. The next moment, Mu-chun's face darkened. "Everyone, what are you doing here instead of staying on the mothership?" Two men and one woman walked into the palace. They were Yu Wenshu's three disciples, Sun Dong, Hong Jun, and Loanna. Although the three of them looked young, they were actually over 100 years old. They were in the prime of their lives. Mu-chun did not dare to look at them directly. Hong Jun walked forward with a dark face. "Officer Mu, Chief Commander Lu promised not to interfere with our mission, but you secretly passed it down and even took the initiative before us. How do you explain this?" Mu-chun sneered. When we do things in the military, we only need to be responsible for our superiors. We don't need to explain to others. Hong Jun laughed. Your superiors requested to capture Ding Ming. Now that Ding Ming has not been found, you want to return. Is this your so-called responsibility? The corner of Mu Chen's mouth twitched. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. Those high-sounding reasons would never be as direct as tyrannical strength. With the three people standing in front of him, anyone with a bit of perception and knowledge would know that these three people were unfathomable existences. Isendale was also on guard. The three of them were unfamiliar, but she did not expect them to be so strong. Who are you? Loanna walked forward with a smile. Miss Isendale, I've heard a lot about you. You really live up to your name. Let's get to know each other. I'm Loanna, a disciple of Senior Yuan Shu of the Sheng Hao group. Isendale was stunned. Why did the people of the Sheng Hao group come instead of the people of the Starbao group? Yuan Shu's disciple? This was going to be troublesome. Sun Dong, who had been silent all this time, walked forward. His attitude was firm. Miss Isendale, this place is the underground ruins of Thousand Sail Star from the Devouring World War 100 years ago. Fortunately, the military has found it, but the Devouring World Army is also eyeing it. For safety reasons, I suggest everyone return immediately. Isendale said, I was going to go up anyway. Sun Dong stared at her and said, Of course, you have to go up, but not alone. Isendale understood. These people were looking for Ding Ming. Of course, this was normal. Ding Ming was a member of the Sheng Hao group. Mu Chen could not help but sneer. Mr. Sun, you're here for Ding Ming, right? Sun Dong said, We're here to pick up the secretary of the Sheng Hao group. Is there a problem? Mu Chen said, In theory, there's no problem, but don't forget that Ding Ming is now a wanted criminal. What you're doing is against the Federation's laws. You should know that this is not an ordinary criminal, but an A-class criminal. Regardless of whether you're covering up or harboring him, once it's verified, even a large corporation like yours will be punished. He thought that these words would intimidate them, but Sun Dong turned to Isendale and said calmly, Miss Isendale, you heard what Officer Muse said, right? Even our Sheng Hao group doesn't dare to cover up for him. Isendale finally realized that these people from the Sheng Hao group were not here to pick up Ding Ming, but to look for Ding Ming. They were not worried about Ding Ming's safety. Instead, they were eyeing the divine light energy on Ding Ming. Isendale sneered. Are you saying that I'm harboring him? Or that I'm covering up for him? Hong Jun stared at her. You know best whether you're harboring or covering up for him. Isendale said proudly. I see that you're aggressive, and I know that you don't want to end this peacefully. If you want to find Ding Ming, go find him yourself. Don't drag me into this. Hong Jun said, It seems that the people from the Rainbow family are very arrogant. You didn't even report it. Isendale stared at him. No matter how arrogant I am, I can't be more arrogant than you. He's just a disciple. Do you really think he's Senior You? Even if Senior You was here, he wouldn't dare to accuse you without evidence. Hong Jun took 2 more steps forward. He stroked the edge of his palm and muttered to himself, I've admired the people on the warrior ranking list for a long time. Miss Isendale is famous on both lists. She has both strength and beauty. I just don't know if anyone can conquer her. Isendale was furious. How dare you have designs on me? You're looking for death. Hong Jun sneered. I hope you can still be so stubborn when you're conquered. Isendale reached out to stop the Guzi siblings. Step back. Guzi and Yitzi weren't stupid. It seemed that a strong enemy had come. A big battle was unavoidable. The siblings took their javelins and retreated to the east corner. Mu Chen also realized that the situation was getting out of control. He lowered his head and gave a few instructions. The 2 soldiers turned and ran. Hong Jun didn't make a move first. Instead, he secretly circulated his origin energy. The temperature in the palace suddenly rose. Even the water in the pool was covered in mist. Isendale secretly thought that this person's cultivation was amazing. Although he was arrogant, he had the right to be arrogant. Yuan Shu had retired 100 years ago. If these 3 were his disciples, they would have cultivated for at least 100 years. They were quite talented to be able to reach the battle saint level. Hong Jun didn't play any fancy tricks. After circulating his origin energy for a long time, he rushed out and slammed his palm toward Isendale. This seemed like an ordinary punch, but Isendale's expression was solemn. She didn't dare to dodge and also raised her palm to meet it. Bang! With the two of them as the center, when their palms collided, a large wave of heat spread out. It was mixed with a solid and heavy body hardening energy. Mu Chun, who was far away, was directly pushed back. However, Hong Jun wasn't pushed back. As soon as his palm was blocked, he immediately changed his palm to elbow his opponent's face. Eisenale also changed her moves very quickly. A series of explosions sounded in the air. In the blink of an eye, several palms and punches were exchanged. The Guzzi siblings couldn't see clearly this kind of inhuman attack and defense rhythm. The two of them could only see some illusions. However, Hong Jun was slightly surprised. The three of them had been with Yuan Shu for many years and rarely had the chance to go out alone. This time, they came out to gain experience. They originally thought that the people on the warrior ranking list were all unworthy of their reputation. He didn't expect Isendale to be so good. His smooth attacks were completely blocked by her. It seemed that he had to teach her a lesson. After another round, Isendale's palms blocked Hong Jun's fist and pushed him away. Hong Jun immediately slid backward. The stone tiles on the ground crackled and flew everywhere. Chapter 726. As soon as Isendale pushed her palms out, she suddenly felt her opponent's aura skyrocket. Hong Jun, who had been retreating, floated up again like a ghost. He used the same old trick and hit her directly with his palm. With a crisp paw sound, Isendale failed to catch his palm this time. Instead, her own palm was bounced off. She retreated quickly in shock. She was fast, but Hong Jun was faster. Hong Jun's left and right palms intersected with each other. It felt like a child's move, but Isendale couldn't stop it. After 3 consecutive palm strikes, her arms were pushed away and Hong Jun's palm hit her chest. He didn't use any true force at the moment of the attack, but controlled his strength in time. Isendale thought that they were both from aristocratic families, so she didn't dare to hit him too hard because of his identity. Unexpectedly, after Hong Jun hit her, he grabbed her bulging chest very flirtatiously, taking advantage of her openly. It feels so good. If you don't have any clothes, I can hold it for at least a year. Hong Jun flashed and was already 20 meters away, but there was a satisfied smile on his face. Isendale was completely furious. How is this like Yuan Shu's disciple? He was simply a bastard. Isendale took a deep breath and struck out with her palm. With a crisp ding-ling, an umbrella-shaped ice blade of source energy appeared in the air, glowing with a faint blue luster. This was no longer a battle saint's punch and kick, but a sharp blade that could take one's life. Hong Jun also pulled his palms in the air, and a large ball of bright, red energy appeared in his palms. The Holy Radiance Flame formation was quickly pulled out. As soon as the ice blades approached the flame formation, they seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. It was obvious that they were evaporating. However, at this time, Sun Dong and Loanna's expressions changed at the same time. Be careful. Hong Jun also felt the danger. When he looked up again, Isendale had already appeared above his head. A ball of blue light appeared in her palm. It was clear that she had activated an ice element martial arts technique. Hong Jun's reaction was unique. At this time, he quickly closed his palms together. The flame matrix was squeezed so strongly that it exploded violently with a bang. The force of the explosion immediately blew away the ice blades and pushed Hong Jun back. The best thing was that Hong Jun forced Isendale to dodge. Otherwise, she would be affected by the aftershock of the explosion. He thought he had used it beautifully, but Isendale didn't fall from the sky at all. Instead, she flipped in the air and struck out with her palm. A golden wall of holy light engraved with all kinds of strange runes and patterns appeared in the air. Even if Hong Jun was able to react in time, there was no space for him to dodge the holy wall that was as tall as a building. Boom! Boom! Sundong and Leona rushed over from distance. They used their palms to block the wall of holy brilliance for Hongjun. Under the effect of their source strength, the wall of holy brilliance gradually dimmed and faded away. Sundong's expression was ugly. "Miss Isendale, he was just sparring with you. How could you be so ruthless?" Sparring? Isendale had returned to her original position. She was extremely angry. "If I were an ordinary person, I would have been stripped naked by him. You call this sparring? He was just trying to humiliate me." Hongjun smiled sinisterly. "Since he wanted to strip you, I won't hold back. How did you become Yu Wenshu's disciple? You deserve to die." Isendale was furious. She pointed one of her palms at the pool and raised it to the sky. The clear water in the pool was quickly pulled out into a huge waterspout, hovering in the air like an ice dragon. She pushed her palms forward again, and the ice dragon immediately turned into countless ice blades and icicles that covered the entire palace. Each blade shone with a sharp crystal blue light. This time, the three of them didn't dare to be careless. Isendale's winter ice dust storm didn't look very powerful, but the three of them instantly felt a bone-piercing chill enveloping them. The three of them were battle saints, but even battle saints felt a bone-piercing chill. Who would dare to face a winter ice dust storm that had been cultivated to this level? Ding, ding, ding. 3 bright blue light shields covered the three of them. The ice blades and ice spears that landed on them were all knocked away. Sundong suddenly punched out, and a bright fire phoenix mirror image suddenly left his body. This fire phoenix was also huge, and it burned the stone floor into a raging sea of fire. Isendale's first reaction wasn't to block the attack. Instead, she quickly released a large amount of invisible ice origin energy to cover the east entrance. Guzi and Yitzi were ordinary people, and their opponent's Holy Phoenix formation was a high-level martial arts technique. Just the temperature alone was as high as 10,000 degrees. If she didn't protect them, the two siblings would be roasted hundreds of meters away. However, this undoubtedly put them at a disadvantage. The fire phoenix instantly crashed into them. Isendale quickly activated the mixed essence umbrella shield, and the pink shield barely blocked it. Unexpectedly, a second fire phoenix appeared. Upon closer inspection, it was actually Hongjun's attack. This fire phoenix didn't attack directly. Instead, it merged with the first fire phoenix, and the whole fire phoenix instantly doubled in size. Isendale immediately felt the pressure on the shield increase sharply. These two were indeed from the same master. Even the coordination of their martial arts techniques was practiced. With a loud clang, the mixed essence umbrella shield was also covered with an ice blue shield. This was an ice shield. The two huge forces collided, and the white fog in front of Isendale rose like clouds. It was obvious that the ice and fire were melting each other. A figure fell from the sky in the thick fog. Loanna took this opportunity to flash above her head, the wrist blade at the cuff of her sleeve glowing with a strong light. The strong light directly formed an extremely thin ray of light that flashed and disappeared. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out as the entire palace exploded. Origin energy scattered in all directions, causing the walls to collapse and the ground to become a deep crater. However, the strange thing was that the pool and pillars in the center were completely undamaged. Isendale retreated to the east entrance. Her chest was cut open, and blood immediately seeped out. However, the wound immediately healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the self-healing effect of the biochemical ability. However, although the wound could heal, the clothes couldn't. Isendale's purple interior was suddenly exposed to the air. Hongjun's eyes suddenly revealed a covetous look. "You didn't let me down. It's much better than I thought." Isendale felt a great deal of pressure. If it was a one-on-one fight, none of the three would be her opponent. However, if the three of them worked together, she had almost no chance of winning. At this time, Yitzi ran over and pulled her sleeve. "Sister, use this." Isendale's eyes suddenly lit up. Yitzi handed her a handful of spirit-searching grass. This could be used to defeat the enemy. I can't wait any longer. Today, I must play with this woman first. Hong Jun rushed forward again. Isendale didn't talk nonsense with him this time. She quickly flashed to the pool in the center and splashed the water 5 meters high with her palm. At the same time, she threw out 3 spirit-searching grass like darts. As soon as the spirit-searching grass touched the pool, it turned into a white poisonous flame with a boom. Isendale then put her palms together, and dark ice power penetrated the rising black smoke in the form of a freezing point. Hong Jun didn't care at first, but after the freezing point passed through the black smoke, it turned into 3 clusters of black thorns with a bang. They were so dense that they covered the sky and the sun. It was impossible to dodge. Although most of the prickles were blocked by the shield, they were blocked by the ice element energy. The black poison penetrated the shield directly. Isendale saw clearly that at least 4 or 5 spots on Hong Jun's chest had been hit by the black smoke. At this moment, Hong Jun's face changed. "Bitch, you dare to use poison?" Isendale also felt that Hong Jun's aura had weakened greatly. He was no longer a threat to her. However, in the next second, her expression changed because Loanna had once again flashed away with her afterimage and transit steps. The direction she flashed towards was not the pool, but the entrance to the east. Her intention was obvious. Her target was the Goose siblings. "Do you have any shame?" Isendale was furious. She also turned around and flashed. But this time she was wrong. Loanna's wrist blade seemed to be stabbing at the panicked siblings, but in fact, she suddenly stopped halfway and leaned back. The sharp weapon stabbed at Isendale, who was chasing after her. This move wasn't very exquisite, but it required a light-speed assassin to grasp the timing very well. Loanna was undoubtedly a high-level assassin. The stab stopped when it was less than 2 inches away from Isendale's heart. Isendale's body twisted strangely, forming a C shape. If she wasn't a biochemical-type origin ability user, this stab would have taken her life. However, this wasn't the end. Since Loanna's stab failed, she simply raised her left foot and quickly kicked back. At this moment, Isendale's head was in front of her. It could be said that she was ramming the top of her head into Loanna's head. In this critical moment, she used her biochemical technique again. Her left arm suddenly expanded by several meters, and she reached out to grab Loanna's ankle. Another strong light flashed past. Isendale let out a cry and bit out a glowing object. It turned out that another sharp blade had ejected from the tip of Loanna's shoe. Her real killing move was hidden in her shoe. After dodging 3 killing moves in a row, Isendale no longer had time to pay attention to her back. Even if she sensed it, she couldn't dodge in time. Sundong's flying foot landed heavily on her back. This kick was no small matter. Isendale directly smashed into the east wall of the cave. The whole palace seemed to shake slightly. "Sister." Yitzi turned pale with fright and ran over in a panic. Isendale climbed up from the rocks with difficulty. In fact, she was injured in more than one place. The origin energy in her body was very chaotic. She didn't know what kind of technique Sundong's kick was. Also, Loanna's sharp blade wasn't ordinary. After she spat out the knife, her upper front teeth were almost all broken. Sundong and Loanna seemed to be ready to fight again. Hong Jun immediately ran over. "Don't kill her. I want to teach her a lesson before I kill her." Isendale's eyes finally flashed fiercely, but her tone was calm. "Yitzi, back off." Chapter 7:27. As soon as the siblings retreated into the passage, Sundong and the other 2 sensed that something was wrong. Isendale's aura, which had been much weaker just now, suddenly rose again. Her body seemed to be bursting with light blue flames. Sundong and Loanna looked at each other. It was obvious that they could not recognize this strange aura. Of course, they did not know that Isendale had secretly activated the smelting space. She had decided to use the divine light energy that Ding Meng had given her. She knew how powerful the divine light was, but she had no idea how to control it. However, since things had already come to this point, she had no choice but to use it. If they continued to fight like they had, she would become Hong Jun's plaything today, and the Gu siblings would also die here. Be careful, Sun Dong suddenly reminded her. Isendale's hand gestures changed a few times. Her thumb and index finger formed a heart shape. After an angry roar, visible black astral wind roared out like a flood. The most shocking thing was that the astral wind seemed to be faintly flashing with a black light. She had forcibly merged the divine light energy into the cold winter ice dust storm. Its power was very terrifying. Sun Dong and the other two did not dare to attack. They quickly raised their palms and formed a huge astral steel shield to block the astral wind. The astral steel shield was a low-level martial skill and was not suitable to block the enemy's big move. However, the three of them were undoubtedly very experienced and knew that although low-level martial skills were not high in level and realm, they were the most proficient in using them. Therefore, as soon as this huge fiery red shield appeared, the torrent-like gales of wind fell on it like raindrops falling on a plate, making ding-ding-ding noises incessantly. Seeing that the three of them were not affected by the astral wind, Isendale was secretly shocked. Why were the opponents she met so strong every time? It seemed that they would have to fight to the death today. Isendale raised her head and roared. An even more ferocious astral wind erupted from the gap in her heart. This time, it was not a flood, but a black pillar of ice. Bang, 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 bang. As the shield continued to shatter, spiderweb-like cracks began to spread across its surface. The ground beneath Sun Dong's group of three also began to crack. F***CK, this bitch is so powerful. Hong Jun already felt powerless. Let's attack together. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble. Sun Dong shouted. Ugh. The three of them also forcefully pushed the shield together, pouring a large amount of essence into it. At this moment, the center of the palace was flashing wildly with red light and fog. It felt like a blood-red castle. With two muffled sounds, Isendale cursed inwardly. Behind her, the Guzi siblings had already fallen to the ground. They couldn't withstand such a terrifying aura and were affected by the origin energy. Isendale had never risked her life for anyone, but when she saw Yitzi lying on the ground with blood flowing out of her mouth, her heart ached and she couldn't help but feel evil. This time, Isendale was going all out. She pushed all of her origin to the limit and poured out all of her energy. Fight out with her. Sun Dong's eyes were also as wide as copper bells. If he let go now, they would be torn to pieces by the other party's origin energy. At this moment, the origin energy steel shield expanded again, becoming snow-white and bright. It was like a suddenly enlarged pupil of light. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire palace disappeared and turned into a bright white world. This was often the result of a battle between battle saints. There would be no real winner unless there was a huge difference in strength between the two sides. Otherwise, both sides would suffer. After a series of tremors, the palace completely collapsed. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the ground was covered with ice and fire. The only things that weren't damaged were the central pillars and the pool. After an unknown amount of time, the smoke and dust dissipated. Isendale stood up shakily from the pile of rubble. After taking 2 steps with difficulty, she couldn't stand it anymore and spat out a mouthful of pink blood. At the last moment, the other party's origin energy shield had exploded. The rebound energy had no effect on her, but if she didn't do anything, Yitzi in the passage would be blown to pieces. She stood at the entrance of the passage and used the last of her origin energy to hold up the origin umbrella. However, the origin energy shield was no longer enough to withstand the scale of energy. She was directly burned by the sharp heat, and her body was basically hollowed out. She was now in a seriously injured state. However, after sensing for a while, she was relieved. Although Yitzi was unconscious, her breathing was even and her life signs were normal. She didn't block the attack for nothing. Looking at the other side, although Sun Dong and the other two didn't die, they were more seriously injured. The three of them had been sent flying to the west corner and seemed to have fainted on the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Eisendel coughed violently and coughed up blood. It would take her 1.5 years to recover from this state. She sat down with her back against the wall and took out a large number of different reagents from her satchel. She reached out and stuffed them into her mouth. If a strong enemy came now, she couldn't think of any other way to get out of this situation except for suicide. Not long after, the Goozy siblings finally woke up. Seeing the mess in front of them, they rushed over. Sister, are you okay? Yeetzy also knew that if Eisendel hadn't risked her life, they wouldn't have had a chance to survive such a terrifying battle. I'm fine, Eisendel panted weakly. She waved her hand and motioned Yeetzy not to move. Let's wait for Ding Ming to come back. I'm going to find brother Ding Ming. Goozy raised his javelin. Don't go. Eisendel stared at the center of the palace. She and Sun Dong and the other two's fierce attacks didn't even shake the pool and the pillars at all. This was definitely not an ordinary pool. How did Goozy go there? At this moment, a cold star suddenly appeared at the entrance of the West Passage. The cold star automatically spread light in all directions, forming an energy space. Eisendel's heart sank. This was obviously a high-end music video transmission. She had experience and could tell that this was not a military transmission system. The military starships couldn't transmit here because they couldn't determine the precise coordinates. Not long after, a man and a woman walked out of the transmission array. The man was dressed in a suit and looked elegant. The woman was stunning and tall. They were Yu Onjia and Lan Bing from the Shanghao group. It seemed that the Shanghao group's rescue ship might have arrived in the Thousand Sails star system. It might even be a small machine that had drilled into the ground. When Yu Onjia saw that Sun Dong and the other two had been knocked down, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. In his mind, these three were already a match for tens of thousands of people. So how could they be defeated so easily? So he directly squatted down and placed his hand on Sun Dong's chest. With his strength, he couldn't heal Sun Dong, but waking the three of them up was no problem. About 5 minutes later, Sun Dong and the other two stood up one after another. Leona panted and smiled. Ah, it's Jia. You came at the right time. Yu Onjia stared at Eisendel with an ugly expression. She can hurt you? Sun Dong sighed. I don't know what medicine this woman took. Her strength is far beyond our imagination. Leona hesitated. Is it the divine light energy? Sun Dong's face darkened. It's possible, but even if it isn't, she can't get away with it. She's the only one who knows where Ding Ming is. Hong Jun's face was covered in blood. F***ck her. I don't care if she has the energy or not. I'm going to kill her today. Yu Onjia's face was cold, and he didn't speak. Sun Dong and the other two were elders to him. He couldn't just sit by and watch them get hurt like this. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to kill her now, Hong Jun said as he walked over. He started to unbuckle his belt as if he was going to take off his pants. Onjia. Lan Bing couldn't stand it anymore. She turned to Yu Onjia. Yu Onjia said coldly, "This is between the elders. Let's not interfere." Lan Bing turned her head again, a trace of disappointment in her eyes. Leona stared at Lan Bing and asked with a faint smile, "Lil Bing, what do you mean? Are you old friends with Miss Eisendel? Do you want to speak up for her?" Lan Bing's expression was also very ugly. If something like this were to happen to you, senior, would you want someone to speak up for you? Leona said proudly, "If someone can really push me to this point, I'll accept it." Lan Bing was expressionless. There's always someone better than you. Binger. Yu Onjia immediately stopped her. "Stand behind me. Don't argue with the elders." Lan Bing turned her head. She really didn't want to see anyone right now. At this moment, Hong Jun was only left with his underwear. No matter how ignorant the Goose siblings were, they should know that something terrible was about to happen. "Stop!" Goozy mustered up his courage and rushed forward with his javelin. Eisendel couldn't stop him even if she wanted to. In fact, it was difficult for her to even open her mouth. "Where did this little dog come from? You dare to block my way?" Hong Jun spat disdainfully. "Do you believe that I can't stretch out a finger and you'll die?" Guzi absolutely believed this. He had just witnessed the terrifying power of these origin ability masters, but he still had to stand up for big brother Ding Ming. Ding Ming said that Izendale was his woman. In Guzi's eyes, she was his sister-in-law, and his and Yizi's family. He couldn't just stand by and watch her be humiliated. With a whoosh, Guzi raised a javelin in his hand and stared at Hong Jun vigilantly. Hong Jun laughed. "Ha, you little brat. You want to kill me with this piece of scrap metal in your hand? Come, I'll let you stab me." Guzi's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He was extremely nervous. He hadn't even been this nervous when facing the monsters in the devouring world, but facing a human origin ability master. To be honest, he wasn't confident. "Come, you don't dare? Don't delay me from playing with women." Hong Jun simply opened his clothes, revealing his black chest hair. Guzi gritted his teeth and pushed out with both hands. The javelin finally flew out. Lan Bing sneered. "So this is beast lust?" Yuan Jie raised his eyebrows. "How can you talk to me like that?" At this moment, Hong Jun had already flipped Izendale over in the distance and was already undoing her galactic clothes. "Stop!" Lan Bing suddenly jumped up without warning. Her palm blade flashed in the air, aiming straight for Hong Jun's back. No one had expected that she would dare to attack a senior of Shenghao. For a moment, Yuan Jie couldn't react. Lan Bing was an ice element warlord and shouldn't have been a threat to an expert like Hong Jun. However, Hong Jun's strength had dropped greatly, and Lan Bing's momentum was too steep. He had to let go of Izendale and dodge to the side. Lan Bing stood in front of Izendale, her face full of anger. "Do you know what you're doing?" Hong Jun was also quite angry that his good time was interrupted, but he didn't dare to attack Lan Bing. She was the young master's girlfriend, and no one could bear the consequences. Sun Dong didn't speak and just turned to look at Yuan Jie. Yuan Jie's face was full of anger. "Bing, or come back. Stand aside and don't interfere. This has nothing to do with you." As soon as he said this, his expression froze. Everyone's expression changed because an erratic aura of an origin ability user emerged from the pool. Another expert had arrived. 10 seconds later, the pool exploded, and a figure flew out from under the water and landed steadily on the ground. Izendale heaved a sigh of relief. Her heart was finally at ease. Ding Ming had returned in time. However, Ding Ming was expressionless. He slowly walked to Guzi's body and squatted down. Guzi's face was full of horror, and his eyes were wide open. Ding Ming looked straight at him, and his expression was a little absent-minded. The siblings had lived too hard a life, and they had never expected to die so tragically here. Seeing Ding Ming carry the siblings' bodies on his shoulders, Izendale said sadly, "I'm sorry. I couldn't protect them." Ding Ming put the bodies down and spread his hands toward her. A pure divine light essence was injected into her body, and the origins slowly regained their vitality. Yuan Jie finally smiled. "Ding Ming, you came back just in time. We're here to take you back to Shenghao." Ding Ming was still expressionless. He slowly stood up. "Who did it?" Yuan Jie and the others were stunned. They could already smell a cold, murderous intent from Ding Ming's expressionless face. Izendale immediately pointed at Hong Jun angrily. "He killed Guzi and Yizi with his own hands." Hong Jun couldn't help but smile. "Secretary Ding, you don't hate me because of the death of a native, do you?" Ding Ming said, "I don't hate you." Hong Jun said proudly, "Very good. You should know who you are. You're the lucky star of Shenghao Group." Ding Ming didn't answer. With a slight force from his eyes, Hong Jun flew up and toward Ding Ming in a panic. "What are you doing?" At first, one could still see her real body, but it quickly turned into a black shadow. The black shadow was like a shadow under the sun, disintegrating bit by bit under the impact of the torrent. In just 5 seconds, Ding Ming stopped releasing source energy. The beam of light disappeared, and there was not even a speck of dust left in the air. A heavily injured battle saint had been melted alive, not even leaving behind a spirit body. At this moment, all the hair on Sun Dong's body stood on end. An unprecedented fear enveloped him. He seemed to be muttering to himself. "Jia, run, run." Isendale, who was on the ground, shouted, "He's also responsible for Gazi's death." This was Ding Meng's reverse scale. Ding Meng suddenly disappeared. Before anyone could follow him, Sun Dong was split in half. He had been cut in half by Ding Meng's sword. Before the two halves of the corpse fell to the ground, Ding Meng struck out with his palm again. A large amount of white light appeared in the palace, and Sun Dong was also turned into ashes by the torrent of white light. Yuan Jie was still standing there without moving. However, from his expression, it seemed that he was scared silly. Not only did Ding Meng dare to attack such a highly respected senior, but she had also killed him in an instant. She had killed him cleanly. The catoptric deflection spun rapidly like a meat grinder and flew towards Hong Jun. This time, even Isendale and Lan Bing did not dare to watch this scene. Hong Jun was directly turned into minced meat, and his flesh and blood splattered all over the ground. Of course, with Ding Meng's decisiveness, he would not let him live. He struck out again, and the white flames burned the minced meat all over the ground. However, Ding Meng was still angry. These 3 pieces of trash are really lucky. Yuan Jie finally came to his senses. His voice was trembling. You kill them. Chapter 729. Ding Meng said seriously, "That's right. I killed them. I didn't cut them into pieces. That's not letting them down." Yuan Jie couldn't accept the change. You are a member of the Shenghao group," Ding Meng said coldly. "I'm sorry. From now on, I'm not." Yuan Jie was confused. "Why?" Ding Meng said. "You kill my family and dare to talk about the group. Even if the president's daughter killed my family, she would still die, let alone Yu Wenshu's apprentice." Yuan Jie calmed down and swallowed hard. You went to Beidou on Lil Bing's mission. Now, can you give me the divine light energy?" He was still thinking about the divine light energy at this time. Ding Meng looked at him as if he was an idiot and said coldly, "You haven't woken up yet." Yuan Jie was really frightened. Not only was he surprised by Ding Meng's courage, but he was also surprised by Ding Meng's strength. A sense of regret suddenly rose in his heart. If he had been more polite to Isendale and listened to Lan Bing's advice to stop Hong Jun from being violent, Ding Meng might have really given him the divine light energy. But it was too late to say anything now. At this time, he noticed that Lan Bing had been standing beside Ding Meng. He couldn't help but call out softly, "Bing." Lan Bing sighed. "Don't worry, Ding Meng won't kill you. After all, when Ding Meng fought with Xing Hong, Sheng Hao took him in. He won't bite the hand that fed him like Hong Jun did." Yuan Jie seemed to be relieved. He suddenly said, "Bing, come here. Let's go." But this time, Ding Meng said, "She won't go with you." Yuan Jie suddenly became nervous. "Why?" Unfortunately, Ding Meng did not answer him. In Ding Meng's eyes, he disdained to kill this rich young master, and there was no need to kill him. Seeing that Lan Bing hadn't moved, Yuan Jie became even more nervous. "What's wrong, Bing? Come here." His tone sounded like he was begging. As a man, he could lose, he could be defeated, he could be humiliated, but when he couldn't call his woman back, this was something that his pride would never allow. Just as he was feeling bewildered, Ding Meng spoke first. "Lan Bing." Lan Bing immediately turned to look at him. "Ding Meng." Ding Meng said, "Come here." Lan Bing did not hesitate and immediately walked in front of him. Yuan Jie felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He revealed a terrified expression. You. Ding Meng stared at Lan Bing, and Lan Bing also stared back at Ding Meng. However, even though Lan Bing was wearing heavy makeup, her eyes were bloodshot. It was clear that she was under immense mental pressure. Ding Meng said, "You shouldn't have come to Thousand Sail Star." Lan Bing stared at him. "I have nowhere else to go." Even Ding Meng had a hard time understanding what she meant. After all, he did not know that the transit string had already met with Lan Bing before coming here. However, Ding Meng's tone became gentle. Come with me. Chapter 730. Yu and Shu continued. There's something I have to thank you for. Thank you for being merciful and sparing Xiao Jie's life. Actually, Ding Ming had not planned to let Yuan Jie go in the beginning. However, when he saw how mad Yuan Jie was, his killing intent had mostly dissipated, so he did not make a move in the end. Ding Ming laughed coldly. I killed your disciple and stole Yuan Jie's woman, and you're thanking me instead? Yuan Shu waved his hand and said, you naturally have to pay the price for your lack of skill. Your woman ran away with another man, so you have to reflect on the reason. However, none of this is important. Ding Ming muttered to himself, the world is full of people, and everyone is here for the sake of profit. Yuan Shu smiled. Very good. You're a sensible person. No wonder you can live until now. Ding Ming said, the reason I can live until now is not entirely because I understand things. Understood. Yuan Shu nodded calmly. Luck is one factor, but personal strength is the deciding factor. Ding Ming said, what are you trying to say? Yuan Shu said, I don't mean anything else. I just want half of what you have. Ding Ming laughed. At the end of the day, you're the same as your disciple. You're also after the holy light energy. Yuan Shu said seriously, this request of mine is not unreasonable at all. It's also a good thing for you. Ding Ming said, oh, let's hear it. Yuan Shu said meaningfully, you killed so many people from the Starbao Corporation and stole the energy from Ling Xingqi. Do you think Ling Zhixing will let you go? You're now a Class A fugitive in the Federation. You can't go back to the Holy Grail Federation anymore. This is just on the surface. The Ling father and daughter's backup plan hasn't arrived yet. Are you sure you can escape unscathed? His words were indeed reasonable. It was fine if the Starbao Corporation made a move, but he was afraid that they would not make a move. This was the most worrying thing. Yuan Shu continued, you having an affair with Lan Bing is a trivial matter for an old man like me. But young people are different. Young people are full of vigor, and what they can't tolerate the most is someone stealing their woman. Xiao Jie will definitely be in charge of Shenghao Group in the future. If you insist on having your own way, what awaits you will be endless masters from Shenghao and Xinghong. I also admit that you are excellent enough, at least among the younger generation. You are the best, but it doesn't mean that you can fight against the whole world alone. Ding Ming said, Shenghao and Xinghong can't represent the whole world, right? Yuan Shu pointed above his head. Right now, the patrol fleet above 1,000 sails is already sealed off the planet, and the Devourer Legion is eyeing us covetously. Do you think you can escape? There is no need to ask this question. Chapter 731. When he saw Ding Ming sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, Yuan Shu secretly praised him. Although Ding Ming was young, his actual combat experience was comparable to those old men who had been through hundreds of battles. There was another bang, and the electromagnetic star appeared again. It floated over from Ding Ming's left wing. Yuan Shu's thought process was quite clever. Since you're waiting for me to make the first move, then I'll make a feint. The diamond-shaped electric net quickly formed and instantly bound Ding Ming. Yuan Shu saw the opportunity and suddenly appeared on Ding Ming's right side. This time, he didn't hold back and viciously kicked Ding Ming's right shoulder. It was a classic diversion tactic. Ding Ming was indeed hit hard by the kick and rolled on the ground a few times. However, Yuan Shu realized that something was wrong. Ding Ming was lying on the ground, but with him as the center, there were two identical Ding Ming at the same time. In other words, there were three Ding Ming sandwiching him in the middle, and he had only kicked one of them. The problem was that this person wasn't a clone, but a real person. Of course, he didn't know that this was Ding Ming's ultimate skill, solitary serene lotus steps, which could create three identical copies. As the saying went, if you want to create a diversion, then I can also lure the snake out of its hole. Ding! This sound was like a sharp blade cutting through a steel plate. Ding Meng's hand, which was burning with blue flames, cut through Yu Wenshu's temple like lightning. Yu Wenshu began to slide backwards. During this process, he seemed to be secretly channeling origin energy to guide Ding Meng's strength. The Tang's suit on his body was instantly shattered, and he only managed to stabilize himself after sliding back 50 meters. The stone slabs behind him shot up into the air, and with a rumbling sound, they turned into orange-yellow origin flames. From this, it could be seen just how terrifying Ding Meng's strength was. Yu Wenshu also revealed an expression of shock. He couldn't believe that this 30-year-old youngster had broken through to the war god rank. Perhaps in the history of the Federal Empire, this was the first person to do so. However, Ding Meng did not chase after him. He just looked at Yu Wenshu from afar with a strange look in his eyes. There's no need to fight. You're already a dead man. The Tang's suit on Yu Wenshu's body was shattered, leaving only a pair of underpants at his waist. His body didn't have strong muscles, but patches of purple and green mutated skin. This skin was uglier and coarser than tree bark, like a withered and rotting steamed bun. This was clearly a top-grade strange poison that plundered the world. Yu Wenshu's expression was extremely ugly. Good boy, you have some skills. Ding Meng shook his head and said, You are no longer human.